Are we ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
At 6:01 p.m., the October 18th, 2018 meeting of the Mountain View Westman School District Board of Trustees is called to order. And we have some special guests here. And we will get to you guys in just a minute. Let's see. No, we'll get to you now. Will you? One of you is leading us, or all of you are leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I believe. Sorry. Oh, okay.
You have to go outside in order to get it.
Well, those of you
Inside.
who are leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please come up and help us out. And trustees, will you please stand?
Where do you want them, at the front or on the podium?
We stand here.
Right in the front. Why don't you guys come right in the front and stand in front of us? Is that okay?
They won't have a mic back.
And I'm happy to hand this mic to you. You guys share it?
And I think it works a lot better if the students stand in front of the camera so that people at home
Can-
see that students are
can
here.
pledge
See,
along.
there's a camera here. Right here. You turn around.
Come
and
back
look.
towards us.
So sit over here,
Like
buddies,
where I'm
or stand
standing.
over here.
All the
Keep
way.
further. Keep
Okay,
going.
now
Keep
turn
going.
around. And you can look at the flag over there. But the camera, the people that are watching at home will be able to see you because the camera's right there.
These are like YouTubers now. Who are YouTubers?
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good
Wait,
job, guys.
Before you sit down, will you introduce yourselves to us and tell us what grade you're in?
Hi, I'm Kaden. Hi, I'm Alondra. We're in 5th grade.
Awesome. At Castro?
Yes, at Castro.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Now we have the roll call.
Jose Gutierrez Jr.
Ellen Wheeler.
Greg Coladonato.
Laura Blakely, and
Tamara Wilson.
thank you. Everybody's here.
And Laura, do you want to explain?
Oh, Tamara Wilson is one of our trustees, and she's calling in today. She wasn't able to attend the meeting live, but she's attending it virtually. So we're happy to have her. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and a motion made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Coladonato. The agenda was approved unanimously. And now we have the school showcase for Castro School.
Good evening.
Yes.
All right.
Good evening.
It's great to be here. We're proud to show you some of our work that we're doing in our upper grades. And we're going to get right to it. We've done some shifting this year in the instructional strategies, adding some project-based learning. And I have our 4th and 5th grade team here, as well as our instructional coach. And they're going to get started as soon as I get the microphone.
So this year we have added project-based learning to our.
Can we ask you to say your name in the microphone? Before
Oh,
you
I'm
raise
sorry.
your hand?
My name is Luz Aragon, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Mariano Castro. And as I was saying, this year we have added project-based learning to our instruction for 3 reasons. We have added it to increase rigor, engagement, and motivation.
My name is Jenny Lynn Unadia, and I teach 5th grade at Mariano Castro. So one thing that we focus on at Castro is rigor, and PBL allows for that. And a PBL feature that we're focusing on is authenticity, which you will see tonight in our projects.
Hello, my name is Tracy Navarez. I teach 5th grade and I teach the PBL portion of our program. We've incorporated our core program into our PBL to have a broader based and more real world experience for the children on what they've learned.
My name is Matt Hillman. I'm the fourth grade teacher. So for a PBL project, it has 8 essential elements that make it a special PBL project. And for our first project, we focused on just 5 of them to make sure that we got a really good result. The first one is a problem statement where the students have to grapple with a problem, which you'll see. Critique and revision is another big part. Authenticity, as was mentioned. Student voice and choice is something that students really enjoy, increases their engagement. And the public audience, which is all of you tonight.
Hello, I'm Natalie Gallagher. I'm the instructional coach at Mariano Castro. Tonight, I work closely with the 4-5 team to design and implement PBL this year. Tonight, we have 2 grade levels, 4th and 5th, who are going to present their project. They're going to do the public audience portion tonight. First up, I have 2 5th graders named Chantel and Vasilisa, who are going to tell you what PBL at Castro is and the steps they took to complete the project. Girls, can you come on up?
Hi, my name is Chantal. This year we learned what PBL is and how to collaborate. Next, we need to be collaborating with our group to think critically about the question. In order for a project to be PBL, it must have an essential question. And it must be answered by the end of the project. PBL is presenting our masterpiece like we are doing tonight. The most important part about PBL is the students becoming the teachers.
Hi, my name is Vasilisa. Today I'm going to be talking about what are the steps we took to complete this project. The first step was to come up with ideas for our question. Our next step was to form our groups to complete the project.
Can you hold the microphone just a little bit closer to your mouth, please?
Next, then we discussed multiple challenges. We picked our main challenge and we brainstormed solutions for our main challenge. The title of our project is School Pride. The essential question is how to keep our school nice. We chose this question because we have a new school and we are respecting it. Next up, 4th grade.
We're going to switch it up and have the 5th graders come up first. Okay, go back. Stay back here. All right, come on up.
Hello, I'm Kaden.
I'm Aaron.
Hi, my name is Ed. Come whatever.
Here's our recycling proposal.
We decided our main challenge at our school is that there are many kids that do not recycle. To summarize, our proposal is to have a recycling program that is run by students at our school.
To do this, we need to buy recycling bins with money we would raise by holding fundraisers. We also need school staff to enforce the recycling and student participation program.
This is how the proposal shows school pride. It gets people to recycle. It also shows that we care about school. It keeps the school clean and nice.
Next up is a 4th grade group.
Hello, my name is Jason and my teammates are Madiz, Gadiel, and Amy. We are from Castro, 4th grade. Our group is focused on conflict resolution. We noticed the main challenge at recess and lunch is a student argue about who is in line first. Others kids are playing alone.
To summarize, our proposal is fellow students will have a script at recess to help with peer conflict resolution.
These are some things we need for a proposal to work. We need some third through fourth graders, a teacher to volunteer their time during recess and lunch, some clipboards, paper, and pencils for our volunteers.
Our proposal is showing school pride by helping students through their challenges and by having students get along and helping make a nice school for students to be at Castro. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Having a public audience is one of the essential elements of project-based learning, and these were the two brave groups that got to come and present to the board. The other groups in 4th and 5th grade will be presenting to the younger grades in the school. And then we have to decide among all these proposals which ones will be implemented this school year. Thank you very
Terrific.
much.
Thank you. And thanks to each of you students. You all did a wonderful job tonight. We're so happy to have you here. Bravo. And we're happy they're getting the support from Principal Lambert and the fabulous teaching staff too. And the parents. It takes a village. Okay. Now is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning items on the closed session agenda. And it looks like there are two different comments, both by Stephen Nelson on two different items on the closed session agenda. So you have 3 minutes each.
There's only one item on the
Thank
closed
you,
session agenda.
Madam President. There are actually two items because it's two different properties, and I gave her a note asking for 2 minutes, one for each item, because there are actually two different properties for two different reasons.
Oh.
Anyway,
it was good.
Use the microphone. Use the microphone.
you live in my area of the city. You've seen these signs around a lot. It has to do with what happens when an government organization starts doing things without letting the community know what's happening. And so I wanted to make one comment about the property at 777 West Middlefield, which apparently, from guesstimates, since we don't have any discussion and haven't had any open discussion from the board or administration, I'll wait until you're done talking to the president. Dr. Rudolph, are you done?
I apologize. We're having trouble with the online system. We want to make sure that our fifth
with the
trustee
video?
is able to hear. That's
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Okay. I don't know why that happens.
Please proceed.
Yeah, it's really good to have open discussion. If this is a teacher housing item, you'll notice later on, Superintendent Simidian has a draft, which is just his own opinion on what this teacher housing thing having to do with the county should be. It is an idea of what talking points are. I'm glad people are going ahead with this, but the point is you're leaving the community out on what the discussion on teacher housing is. Every candidate seems to say, oh, let's have better communications when they're running for office. But Trustee Wheeler and Trustee Coldonado, you're saying that as candidates, but you're not implementing that as people sitting on this board. I would like to see a special item or a special meeting or some disclosure of what the draft ideas are you're working on. We're not getting that. That I think is unacceptable. If you say we're communicating, we want transparency. That's the item on West Middlefield. The other thing is the property within the North Bay Shore. $5 million a year is still not being given to this academic, education institution. Even though we have a shared shoreline, they're only sharing half of the general property tax revenue that they're getting per year from all those billions. There's at least 3 billions of assessed valuation out there. This isn't passed on to the district. It's diverted to the city-controlled shoreline district. But that district, in its 1969 statute authorization, is allowed to make, quote, public buildings. Schools are absolutely public buildings. We know how to do CO, certificate of participation. Your CFO knows how to do this. The city can do certificates of participation. $5 million a year is certainly enough to build a school that may be needed out there. There is absolutely no reason that the people who live in the rest of the district should have to pay for a school out there when the Shoreline District is diverting $5 million a year that could be used for that kind of project and a COP financing. So hold their feet to the fire, make them, meaning the Shoreline District, pay for these facilities that are out there out of the money that is being taken away from this school district. Thank you.
Thank you. At 6:17, we're now adjourning to closed session.
left stuff back in the.
And I think I left it. Because the bookmarks didn't have enough on this one. And then I tried to put them in. And save.
All my stuff was at Tamara's place.
Miller time. Yeah, I just checked myself.
Oh, I'm gonna lose. So one of us has to use our phone. I think mine will end up dying, but I can do it for now. And then, does somebody else have a phone? Pardon? You need her number, or do you have it handy? My agenda up here. Here it is. Having technical difficulties this evening. Okay.
We don't think that based on that computer program, just let me know.
Okay, it's 7:17. We are reconvening the open session, and I'd like to report that no action was taken in closed session. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The following items will be handled with one action. However, any item may be removed from consideration by individual board members or the superintendent. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on a motion made by trustee Gutierrez and seconded by trustee Coladinato, the consent agenda was approved unanimously. The next item on the agenda is communications. Do we have any members of employee organizations here to speak this evening? Okay, any members of district committees wishing to make a report?
So will this also include DLAC?
DLAC is a district committee.
Okay, so I've got a quick update, and this is just,
Great.
I'm going to say it in English and then I'll say it in Spanish. Superintendent Rudolph is going to be having this cafecito the 25th at Castro Mistral. Dr. Rudolph, that's between 4 and 5 or 5 and 6, or what are the hours?
Is that from 5 to 6, right before PK?
Okay. And so I would encourage anyone and everyone who's a part of that community to just stop on by and feel free to ask your questions. Dr. Rudolph has always been available to the Spanish-speaking community. I'm happy that we initiated this a few years back and that we're continuing this as well this year. Now I'm going to say this in Spanish. Para todos los miembros de la comunidad en general, les quiero decir de que el 25 de octubre en la escuela de Castro Mistral va a estar presente ahí nuestro superintendente Allende Rudolph y va a tener la oportunidad la gente, los padres en general, de preguntar cualquier pregunta que tengan sobre los estudios de sus hijos o cómo la vida del distrito va hasta este punto. estas citas se empezaron hace 3 años y le doy gracias al doctor Rudolph de también continuar este proceso este año también. Así es que muchas gracias por su tiempo y esperemos verlos ahí pronto. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of other district committees? No. Okay. Dr. Rudolph, superintendent's comments.
Yep. So I put over on the table as well as left at each one of your desks, and I'll email this out so that Trustee Wilson has it also. Sort of our communication process. This also will be included in my weekly. So yesterday we sent out letters and emails to all families, as well as individuals who are going to be moving. We're also mailing those. This is for our boundary transition. We have sent out talking points, which are included in the packets. Principals are also talking with staff. And the next Wednesday, Mrs. Geisel, as well as I, will start our tours to talk about staffing implications at each one. Oh, sorry, as well as Mrs. Bauer. So pretty much the whole team. We'll go out and start talking about the staffing impacts that we have. And so we have also set up, in the event that a parent has a question, they can reach out to the school sites, which is what we're encouraging, or the secretary, or as well as the teacher. But in the event that their answers or their questions won't get answered, we have a contact form that any parent can fill out and can submit to us. And then we'll have somebody from the district office respond back to them with an appropriate answer. And then we will continue. I know you've seen the letters already, but we'll continue to remind people as we move forward. And then we also have a video, part of our Let's Talk series this year, that will be coming out to discuss that also. And then the last thing I would say is, I've mentioned this at all the parent coffees I've had this year, as well as with the PTA presidents. And the PTA presidents, as well as the principals, gave us some great feedback on the letters before we sent it out.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Any questions or comments, trustees? Okay.
So will we be notified when the video goes up on the website, or how would that work?
Yeah. So each month we release a different Let's Talk series. This one was about textbook adoptions. The transition one, Boundaries and Transition, comes out right before registration. So I believe it's scheduled for December to be released.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to community comments. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. Speakers are requested to complete a speaker card and state their name for the record. If there are additional comments after 10 minutes have elapsed, this item may be continued after all the action and discussion items are completed. And I have one card here from Jennifer Anderson Rossi. Is there anybody else? Well, if anybody else would like to speak, please submit your card to Ms. Lilga, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, President Blakely, Superintendent Rudolph, and trustees. As you know, I'm Jennifer Anderson Rossi, and I'm the lead petitioner for Bullis Mountain View. And after months of community engagement, development, and reflection, I am pleased to share that I submitted the petition for Bullis Mountain View Tuesday morning at the district office. The petition is unique. It includes best practices that we have implemented successfully at Bullis Charter School, in addition to research-based strategies to address clear areas of need in the Mountain View community. We look forward to your collaboration through this process. We are in no way trying to rush this process. As you know, we started this process several years ago through strategic planning and have enjoyed our meetings with you over the past year. I understand there is some confusion around the timeline and dates for the petition process, receipt, hearing, and decision, and I request a meeting to discuss the timeline so there is no misunderstanding about the important dates of this process and to ensure that we are on the same page. I also really welcome an opportunity to answer questions and to discuss any feedback you have regarding the charter petition. I will work directly with Dr. Rudolph as it was requested at our previous meeting, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to review and discussion, request for input. And we have Assemblyman Semidian here to speak on below market housing. County Supervisor, excuse me. I'm so sorry. The Honorable County Supervisor here to speak on below market housing for teachers in conjunction with the County of Santa Clara.
Thank you all. You neglected my most important title, past president, Palo Alto School Board. So thank you for including me in the conversation tonight. I understand that the conversation tonight is just that. It's the beginning of the conversation, that the item is on your agenda for discussion only, and that it will come back for possible action following the discussion and deliberation by your board. I did, however, want to encourage the board when the time comes for a decision to not only authorize, but direct the superintendent, with whom I've had very good preliminary conversations, to work collaboratively with the County of Santa Clara, including my office in the 5th Supervisorial District, to pursue the possibilities for teacher housing in cooperation and collaboration with our county. I think it's probably helpful to share with all of you that this, and I say all this understanding that you're having a larger set of conversations with the city of Mountain View. I don't think there's anything mutually exclusive, quite the opposite. I think the more opportunities we pursue, the better off we all will be. But we are now well past what was initially a notion, then became a thought. Now it's a formal concept. And the concept is, hey, we've got some underutilized county property in Palo Alto that is in a marvelous location. It is across the street from the Palo Alto Courthouse. It is literally a block and a half from Oregon Expressway, Page Mill Road, El Camino Real, major thoroughfares. It is a block and a half from a Caltrain station on California Avenue. It is a block and a half from a thriving commercial and restaurant district where all kinds of services are readily available. It's an ideal site because we don't have to worry about anybody reacting about losing their open space, because right now it's a parking lot with a little bit of a dilapidated building on it. We don't have to worry that anyone is saying, why are you putting a multi-family project in our single family neighborhood? Because the buildings all around it are 4 stories tall, and we're ready to go. And to their credit, my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors responded with a unanimous vote to set the property aside for teacher housing specifically. All of that, of course, is contingent on getting a good project proposal before them, as well as before the city of Palo Alto. So we have one of the major obstacles already cleared, which is we have a site that has been designated and set aside for this purpose. Now, that means you have to come up with funding, and what I've looked for is, I think the property is probably worth $12 million. I could be off on that. We haven't done an appraisal yet. I think to build, say, 60 units is something like $600,000 a unit, given the current construction costs. So in order to further write down the cost of the property, I'm looking for $12 million in hard funding. The city of Palo Alto has agreed to put up $3 million tentatively, again, contingent on a project proposal worthy of support. The county of Santa Clara, where I work, my colleagues again, agreed to put up $6 million. So that means we need to find a last $3 million to sort of say, we're ready to go. We just need a mortgage. I am asking 5 superintendents, 5 school boards, 5 districts. Does this interest you? And if so, could you direct your superintendent to spend a little time and energy on this, to enter into conversations about the possibility, and to identify $600,000 per district for the possibility of getting 20% of the 60, 70, 80 units, however many we have. I hope you think that while that's a number that I know is not inconsequential, and because I am a former school board member and a former state legislator, I know there isn't a line item in your budget that says teacher housing. I know that. But what I'm hoping we can do is, by asking you for 1.5% of the cost, we can give you 20% of the units, and I'm hoping you'll think that that's a good deal for your district and the teachers here. Last thing I'll say, because I noticed there was a time limit on this item, is this is not something we do because it's a nice thing to do for teachers who we value. I say that as the son of 2 public school teachers. This is something that we need to do as a matter of necessity. Even districts who say, well, you know, a lot of our teachers live right here in the community, are not always as mindful as they might be of the fact that many of their teachers are in their 60s. They're going to retire in a 2-5-year period, 2-year, 5-year period. And then the question is going to be, how do we attract and retain the very best and brightest teachers for our schools? And if they have to commute from halfway to Hellengone, they're going to make decisions that say, I'm going to teach there as well as live there rather than teach here. And we want them here. And once they're here, we don't want them spending 3 or 4 hours running themselves ragged, going back and forth when that is time they could be spending with kids or on lesson plans. And frankly, and this one's a little less tangible, but I think it's important, you know, every community has its own struggles, its own challenges, its own community culture. And it is easier to be responsive to that if you are in it and of it. I say this as someone who grew up with a dad who taught Palo Alto High School back in the days when you could buy a home in Palo Alto on a single school teacher's salary. And that meant that whatever was going on in that community, he understood it because we were really part of it. We weren't people who showed up at the beginning of the day and left at the end of the day because we had to. So for all those reasons, I hope that when you take this matter up at a subsequent board meeting, you'll provide direction to your superintendent, ask him to look for some funding, and that at some point in the future, we'll all be at a groundbreaking ceremony together. Thank you, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Trustees, questions?
I'm good. I appreciate the help that you're extending to the community at large and to this particular school district in general. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to making a difference.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank you for the innovative, thought that you've put into this, and also the other 4 county supervisors who agreed with you on this, this housing in North County. I'm hoping that if this is successful, that they will look for similar opportunities in their own districts if they can find them. I also want to say, and I don't know if any of you know this, so I will share this right now. My father also was a high school history teacher, and he was able to buy a house in our hometown. And so I absolutely understand the shift in, in the world when high school history teachers could buy a middle-class house and have a middle-class income and have children that grow up like you and me, versus today when, President Blakely and I both attended your town hall at Mountain View High School, where we heard testimony from teachers who are driving 2 hours away, and they are asked by their students to attend a play or attend a track meet or something like that. And they have to, consider, do I want to go to this and then extend my day by another 2 hours to travel? So your thought of having teachers who are embedded in the communities where they are teaching, I think is a very powerful one. And I absolutely support your concept.
Supervisor Shamidian, thank you for coming up with this, for spearheading this idea. Did I understand it correctly that if we're able to chip in our $600,000 share, that 12 of those units would be kind of earmarked for teachers in our district to be able to live in them for the foreseeable future?
Yes, and again, we're sort of at the concept stage now. Who knows what the Palo Alto City Council will eventually approve. It could be 70 units, it could be 80 units, it could be 50 units. But the notion was that I would ask each of the 5 districts, Foothill De Anza Community College, Palo Alto Unified, Mountain View Wistman, Los Altos, and Mountain View Los Altos High School District, if they, since these are all close proximate, if they would like to participate. So if we had 60 units, the notion is that we would provide 12 units. And I know that, some people say, well, gee, that's not really going to, quote, solve the problem. And let me just say, for the 7 teachers for the 12 teachers that you desperately need to teach that subject, work with this group of kids who have that specialty, it's going to mean a lot, not just to them, but to the kids they teach. And then to your point, year after year after year, because the notion would be that the county would hang on to the land because it's a county site, probably lease it long-term for 50 years, 99 years to a nonprofit partner. And then the nonprofit partner would actually be in the business of running the property, because I'm pretty sure that Superintendent Allende does not want to be a landlord. I haven't asked him, but I'm pretty sure.
You might be
about that.
surprised.
So yes, a long-term commitment with roughly 20%. Could that change? Yes. If we had more units and somebody said we'd like more units and we'd like to see if we can stretch a little to find the funding to do that, then that's a conversation we'd have with are possible partners. If it turned out a district fell out, we could say, are you interested in more units? Or we could say, is there another district that should be included? And, not to be too radical here, but I'm prepared to look across the county line, because I think it's kind of an arbitrary line, and say, hey, what about the Menlo Park Elementary School District? What about the Ravenswood Elementary School District? The mere fact that there's that boundary line on the map doesn't mean that they're not really, part of this region. They are. It remains to be seen, but you have the concept right. And just one more thing, since you gave me the chance. What I started to say is, 12 units, 60 units, it's not going to solve the problem. But to Trustee Wheeler's point, if we could do 5 of these, that's 300 units. That's a big deal in this part of our county in terms of actually solving the problem. And I think the concept is a pretty simple and straightforward one. Find a piece of underutilized or surplus government land, put that in the deal, and you've solved 25% of the problem. Get up some hard funds to solve another 25% of the problem. Go get your mortgage, and you're offering units at half the cost that they would otherwise be on the market for. I think that we can do that not just once, but hopefully again and again.
I had a question to direct at the superintendent or to the director of finance. Would we be able to put $600,000 of capital money into this project? It wouldn't have to come out of our general fund. It would be ideally money that was available in Measure G or some other building program, correct? Maybe developer funds or some other thing?
We wouldn't be able to use Measure G funds because there's a time limit. We could, if there was existing funds from our certificate of participation, we could possibly use that if that excess is there. I don't know what's left in our budget allocation sheet. The other thing is just finding where the additional monies lie. I think both Dr. Clark and I would say, as long as we know that this is an expenditure that we're going to have, then it's easy for us to figure out how we're going to fund it, provided that we understand what the time frame is. If we need it tomorrow, then I think that's a totally different conversation than if we need it a year from now.
Supervisor Simitian, do you need the money tomorrow?
No, I only wish we needed the money tomorrow. I wish things moved that quickly. I'm excited by the speed with which this has gotten some traction. I mean, this was just a notion as recently as January. Here we are now, eight months later, and we've got a parcel identified, the parcel set aside. We've got $6 million and $3 million committed. We're having conversations with 5 different districts. 2 others have already taken the first step that I'm hoping you'll take soon, Foothill De Anza and Los Altos. And to the superintendent's point, if it was $600,000 spaced over 3 academic years, 200, 200, 200, that would work. If it was capital funding that you had available at some time, that would work. If you had a school foundation that wanted to put the money up to say, this is how we want to help, that would work. If there was a community foundation you could persuade, that would work. So those are the very kinds of things I'm hoping that we'll be able to explore if and when your board moves to provide direction. Thank you.
Superintendent Rudolph, we could provide direction now if we wanted to, correct? It's not taking action. It's
Mrs. True, yes.
Okay. Okay.
As long as 3 of you agree, at minimum.
Go ahead.
Do you have any
I'm
more
just
questions?
wondering if you. No, I'm really excited about it, and I think bit by bit. I mean, Rome wasn't built overnight, and we have to take steps. So even if it's 12 units or whatever amount it is, that's like you say, 12 teachers or 12 staff members that would be housed near our facilities. And I love the creative approach. I think that's really wonderful. And so thank you. And Ms. Wilson, do you have any comments that you want to make or questions?
This is one of our board's stated priorities, and I think this is a very creative solution to a much bigger problem, as everybody's already addressed. I just think that the idea, even if it's simply 12 units, it's the idea of creating this model, and it's a model that can be replicated potentially in the future. And I think it could set a really strong precedent, both in the county and the state, and perhaps elsewhere. So I'm fully in support of this. I understand it's the exploratory phase, so we are not dedicating any specific funds at this point, but I am happy to see us as a district explore this further.
And I think several of us, I don't know how we formally give direction. Trustees, are you interested in providing direction?
Well, I think by our comments, we all did.
I think so.
I'd like to be more specific about it, though. That individually, as one trustee, I direct the superintendent to further investigate this. What wording would you recommend?
Well, I think, candidly, if you have this on a subsequent agenda, then I think let me say first, thank you. I'm appreciating the very positive response. That being said, as a veteran of a 2-meeting school district governing board, I know the process. I don't want you to be in a position where you have done anything out of process. And I really do hope that you will take formal action on an agendized item at a subsequent meeting so that I can then say we now have 3 district boards that have voted formally to ask their superintendents or chancellors to take this action. So no urgency tonight. I know you'll have a subsequent meeting, and the language that we have used in other districts at their suggestion has been direct the superintendent to enter into negotiations and identify possible sources of funding for the $600,000 parcel match. And that's what we're asking for tonight again.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Smithian.
One thing I did learn is take yes for an answer. I'm going to go.
Thank you. All right, the next item we're moving to the review and action portion of the meeting, and the next item is reopeners for negotiations between the Mountain View Westman School District and the California School Employees Association. Ms. Geisels.
Good evening. You have in your packet the reopener proposals for negotiation between the Mountain View Westman School District and the California School Employees Association, Chapter 812. The district's initial proposal will cover 3 articles: Article 9, transfers and promotions; Article 12, leaves; and Article 14, compensation and benefits. And in lieu of CSCA being present, I will just briefly state that their initial proposal only covers 1 article, and that's compensation and benefits. So staff is asking the board approve these initial proposals so we can begin reopening negotiations for the 18-19 school year with CSCA.
Thank you. Trustees, were there any questions or comments?
I have a quick question, just for the record. In terms of their 1 point, after they present this now, do they have the right to amend and add on another 2?
Yes, they can do that. We can talk about that at the table and we can work through that. But typically, I have it on good faith that this is the 1 article they would like to discuss. So if they have any changes, we can discuss that with them.
Thank you.
Present it.
And I forgot to ask whether members of the public wanted to make any comments on Supervisor Smithian's proposal, but are there any members of the public wishing to comment on the reopeners with the CSCA? Okay.
I move that the board approve the district's initial proposals for reopening negotiations for the 2018-2019 school year between the Mountain View Westman School District and the California School Employees Association, Chapter 812, as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, on a motion made by Trustee Gutierrez and seconded by Trustee Wilson, the motion was passed unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Geisels. Okay, the next item on the agenda is single plans for student achievement for Bub, Castro, Crittenden, Huff, and Mauna Loma. And Ms. Bauer is going to start, I suppose.
You off a little bit, yes. So tonight we have the principals of 5 of our schools here to present the highlights of their single plans. We're going to start with Bub and Ms. Nguyen, and then the rest of the principals will just come up when it's their turn. At the end of all the presentations, once you've had a chance to ask each principal questions, at the very end, we are asking that you approve all of the single plans for student achievement for the 2018-19 school year.
Thank you. And we probably, I mean, since there's five of you here tonight, it's going to be a long evening. We'll probably take a break at some point, just when the timing is appropriate. So thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is Cindy Nguyen, the principal at Bub Elementary School. So I want to say thank you for the opportunity to share some of Bub's successes, our opportunities for growth, and our plans for improving this school year. Going to skip through some of the data slides at the beginning. We all are, because we know you've had a chance to take a look at them. We want to get straight to the heart of what we're planning to do this school year. So last year, Over 75% of our kids met or exceeded standards in English language arts. The majority of the kids actually exceeded standards. We maintained our progress from last year, but we did not meet our goal. But that tells us that a lot of our kids are succeeding, so we want to continue with a lot of our strategies, but then we also want to refine and add so that we can continue growing and better meet the needs of the 25% of the kids who are not meeting or exceeding standards. Here are some of the strategies that we're going to implement this year. I'm going to highlight a few of them in the next slide. So one thing that we're going to do this school year is we're going to continue with our 2 RTI teachers teaching NGSS STEM classes. And what that has to do with language arts actually is that their STEM classes build a lot of background knowledge and vocabulary for kids, and background knowledge and vocabulary are key for reading comprehension and reading development. Additionally, they're working a lot, the science teachers, on building the inquiry, engineering, scientific practice standards of NGSS, and those kinds of skills are transferable actually to any learning. And then those 2 science teachers also provide the mechanism or the time that allows the RTI for ELA to happen in the first place. So last year, our data showed, our pre and post RTI data for ELA showed that kids were making growth in those RTI sessions. So we want to continue leveraging the science teachers for that. In math last year is the same thing. 75% of our kids met or exceeded standards. So we have a lot of kids who continue to do really well. We didn't meet our goal. We still have 25% of kids that we want to do better for. A lot of that similar with ELA. We want to continue with that strong first teaching because we know that's been helpful for a lot of our kids. But then we have opportunities, particularly in the idea of RTI for math. We did not really have an RTI program for math last year. So here are some of the strategies that we're going to try this year. Like I said, the big one for math will be about building in RTI time. So for 4th and 5th grade, we reworked our schedule so that every 4th and 5th grader actually has 2 periods of ELA RTI each week and 2 periods of math RTI. In grades K through 3, we still only have 2 RTI periods a week total, but teachers are going to swap out. So every 3 to 5 week cycle will be either ELA or math based on what they see the kids need at that moment. And here's more data that I'm going to skip through because I know you've had a chance to look at it. So for the achievement gap, our goal was to reduce the number of at risk of becoming LTEL students by 1. We did not reduce the number of at risk of becoming LTEL students that we had. When we looked at our actual at risk of becoming LTEL students, they were at risk and they also had IEPs. So one thing that we've discovered is that we need more support and training with how to support kids with language acquisition while having a learning disability. So that's one thing we're working on this school year. For next school year, we're going to continue with reducing the at-risk student goal, but we're also adding an RFEP goal. We saw that last year that scores for our RFEP students dropped compared to previous years. And so we want to make sure that we have a goal and action items to support continued achievement of RFEPs. So one of the key actions that we're going to do is we're going to provide English 3D curriculum instruction for our 4th and 5th graders. We did that last school year, but we're refining our practice this school year. One thing that we're really going to do with the English 3D is we're going to more closely monitor our RFEPs. So after every RTI cycle, look at what the RFEPs are doing. And if they're not making the progress that we want in that RTI cycle, we can also have them be part of the English 3D group so that they continue to get the support they need to be academically successful. Another thing is that we want to continue with more SIOP strategies in math and science. Those are the 2 subject areas we chose to focus in. Last school year, we saw that our ELs actually increased 9 percentage points in math, and we think a lot of that is because they had some language supports to help show what they know in math. For human capital, we did meet our goal. For this coming school year, we want to use more numerical, quantitative data to show growth in human capital. So we're going to use the school climate survey data, and we want to have an increase in the percentage of teachers and support staff who feel like their professional growth is supported by the school. And so here are some of the key actions that we're going to take. The big one for us this school year is that we want to involve our instructional assistant staff in a lot of our professional development. We have 2 special day classes in our school, and plus a lot of the students who are inclusion students, and we want to make sure that all staff feel like they have the support they need to support all kids. So they've been invited to staff meetings about PBIS or behavior supports, but also staff meetings about small group instruction, because especially in the special day class, they work a lot with the small groups. And we saw in the achievement gap one that was an opportunity to support kids that were language learners and have a learning disability. Our inclusive and supportive culture goal, we met that goal as well. This school year, in addition to tracking our average daily attendance rate, we also added goals for suspension. And we're going to use a school climate survey. We want to see an increase in the percentage of students who feel a strong sense of school belonging, as well as an increase in the percentage of parents who feel like Bub School is a good fit for their children. And so we have several strategies to support those goals. A big one for us this year is we're implementing PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. This is year 1 for us. So the big push for year 1 is focusing on the explicit teaching, modeling, reinforcement, and review of the BUB expectations or the common BUB rules. We call it the BUB way. We also want to incorporate the work that we've been doing with Project Cornerstone for the last 6 years. And so we want to make sure that we're building a culture where all kids feel valued, respected, and known. So we're doing a lot of strategies for that. We're also starting to work on what Tier 2 will look like, Tier 2 behavior support at Bub School. So here is a slide that shows what worked at Bub this year, what didn't work. It's a summary. I've talked a lot about these things, the changes that we're going to make. One big change that we haven't talked about yet that I want to talk about now is that we're really increasing our focus on target students. So when you look at the data in the big picture, it looks like we maintained growth. So the assumption, if you just look at that, would be that the kids who did well last year did well this year. The kids who didn't do as well still didn't do well. But when we looked at individual students from year to year, it turned out actually that there's a group of students in both language arts and math who moved from nearly met to the met, but it doesn't show up in our data because we had almost an equal number of students who went from met down to nearly met. And then you look at individual students again, and there's a chunk of students who stayed at the nearly met, and we missed that opportunity to move them to the met. So with our RTI system before, because we had 2 groupings of kids, it was easy to make a group that was the exceeded group and a group that was the kids who were definitely not making standard. And then the kids who were just right there, we had to make a decision whether we were going to put them with the kids who were not meeting standard or the kids who were exceeding. And so we missed the boat. We missed the opportunity for a lot of the kids that were just right there. So this year, each teacher has 3 target students. 3 kids, when you look at their history of data, are kind of just right there. So when we design first instruction, we're really thinking about designing that first instruction for those students. We're monitoring their progress in first teaching and in RTI really closely so we can see whether the decisions we made to put them in one of the 2 groups was the correct decision. For those students, we would err on the side actually of the intervention group more. Last year, I think we erred on the side of the enrichment group. And actually with the older 4th and 5th grade students, as part of their parent-teacher conference this year, we did a goal setting in which we printed out their history at BUB in terms of their assessments. And when the kids saw that they were so close to kind of crossing that line, they bought in more, they got more excited of setting goals for themselves. When the teacher talks about this is what I'm going to do to help you this year cross that line, it just seemed more tangible for those 4th and 5th graders. And when their parents saw that, they also were more excited about, oh, I'm going to do this to support. So that's a big piece for us this year to focus in on those target students. So that's basically what we're working on at Bub School this year. Target students, PBIS, SIOP are kind of the big 3, and the Math RTI big 4 that we're really working on this year. Questions?
Thank you. Trustees, questions?
So Cindy, I know you prefer to be called Cindy, so I'm going to refer to you that. I asked you this question and you gave me an answer, but I would like to ask it in public. I was talking with a Bub parent who has children who score advanced, and he was asking, what is it that Bub School does for advanced students? Because he was a little concerned that his own children weren't being challenged. So, and you gave me, I thought, a really good answer. Can you share here what Bub does for those students?
Yeah. So thank you. So part of our second chance model is providing time for students that need that extra instruction, but it's also time for students who deserve that enrichment time. And so for second chance ELA, students who need enrichment, they go into a group of students that also are meeting or exceeding standards. And so they're doing additional work with language arts. They may be studying doing more in-depth book studies or doing some projects related to the content that they're learning. In Second Chance Math, it's the same thing. They have that opportunity to go deeper with their math learning, to do some projects related to their math learning. And so last year we actually spent a lot of our focus was, because that was year 2 of RTI for us, we focused a lot on building the enrichment piece for our students. Whereas in year 1, it was about the structure and making sure that the intervention worked. So last year we built a lot of that enrichment part. And so we actually got one support staff to kind of help craft more of those units for us so that we can make sure that we had quality stuff going on for the enrichment portion.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jose?
Yes, I have a few questions. I'm so sorry. I wish these had page numbers so I can just go back and say, hey, at page 4, let's look at this. It's under the title of Academic Achievement Math. And there was a comment here that says addition of PSYOP strategies took away some focus from content. What I'm trying to figure out is, do you expect that to also happen this year, or what does that mean in terms of this year now? Has that been resolved, or is this still an ongoing issue? Or
I think that at the beginning of the school year, every time you put something new into place, that takes a lot of focus. So sometimes some of the other pieces go down until you can get fluent in the new piece. And so at the beginning of the school year, we spent a lot of energy just learning how to implement the PSYOP and put those strategies into our lessons. And so at the beginning of the year, I'd say like the first trimester, there was a lot of emphasis on building the language. And when you're not as fluent in how to do that, it takes a lot of the instructional time from the class when your brain's not able to do both yet. And so I think that this year we're more fluent in that. So I don't suspect that that will be the case. One kind of side effect that was a positive side effect is because teachers spent so much time planning PSYOP, they actually talked so much about the math content that their knowledge about math grew as well. And so as we got later into the school year, we saw a lot of collaboration around language, but also about the content, because you had to know your content well in order to figure out what language kids needed.
Thank you. And one more question, and this goes down to inclusive and supportive culture.
Mhm.
It celebrates successes, shift mindset around English language learning and reclassification. What do you mean by shift mindset? Are we talking about the mindset of the students, of the parents, of the teachers, or the community as a whole?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think in the past, we always want to celebrate kids when they grow, right? But I think in the past we put a lot of emphasis on reclassification was the end goal rather than making sure that all kids were successful and got the support that they needed. That was the ultimate. And so we as teachers pressured ourselves to focus on reclassification rather than support. And then also kind of the mindset of they've reclassified, they've graduated. Perhaps we don't need to give them as much support as before, which is partly true, but we also need to make sure that we are monitoring them to make sure that it was, they still deserve support, right? Even if it's not language support, academic support. And I think part of it was before, because we focused so much on reclass was the end goal, we forgot, or it didn't occur to us to monitor as closely whether they were succeeding or not.
I'm not busting your chops, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
So because my
Mhm.
understanding was that once they reclassified, they did receive support. So what do you mean?
Like just monitoring to make sure that they're still getting the correct RTI support.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That helps me
Mhm.
because I kind of panicked. So
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Mhm.
First of all, Principal Nguyen, I want to acknowledge that when we saw the results of the staff surveys, that Bub had excellent teachers at Bub appear to think very highly of all the things going on in the administration at Bub. and I know that you're a major reason for that. So I wanted to let you know about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wanted to ask about the first two goals that were mentioned, the ELA and the math goal.
Mhm.
If I'm reading them right, if the number of students succeeding a meeting or exceeding doesn't change from this year to next year, that we actually meet the goal still. And so I'm wondering if that's stretching hard enough. Can you go back to one of the slides? It's like slide 6 or 7 or 8 or something where it says, one slide says where we're at, and then the next slide will say what we're going for. You might have gone by them. I
That
can't
must
remember
be
if they were
before
before or
this.
after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where we're at.
So there we are. So the goal was 76 to 78. We hit 75.
Mhm.
Didn't meet the goal. The new goal includes 75. So if we don't go up at all, we meet the goal. That seems
No,
like
it says we're going from 75 to, and we want to get to 77.
Oh, 76. Okay. So
That's a
that
10%.
wording is a little.
Yeah. Okay.
It says the goal is, and then you're explaining it to us, so we'll understand. But other people coming to that might think that looks like a range.
Understood. So it should say from 75 to 77.
Even that still sounds like a range,
Mm.
but increase from 75 to 77
Would be clear. Yes.
would be a little clear. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
And so it makes the math one or the other one moot. Okay, thank you.
And before I have one question, but Ms. Wilson, was there anything that you wanted to ask or comment on? Okay, well, while she's thinking about it, I just wanted to ask about the positive behavior system that you're implementing. It sounds like the focus this year is on kids. Will you also have part of that for like parents, like a parent positive behavior thing? I know some schools do that.
In terms of parent education,
Just in terms of norms that parents agree to meet.
I see. Last week at a principal's coffee, we did parent education. So we informed them of what we're working on in terms of behavior and kind of like the background of why we're doing it. And we went over the BUB way. We talked about how they can help reinforce the BUB way with their own students. And because we were talking a little bit about why we're doing it, because we want to reinforce and kind of shape the behavior of kids, we also talked about how they can support at home, like how can they use those strategies at home as well. So that's kind of how we're bringing in the parent piece of that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yes.
That is correct. We offer an after-school class for each 3rd through 5th grader. Not every kid takes one, but it's offered to every single kid. Yeah, we do collect data on who comes. In the past, we also, not in the past. So last year, we collected data on who came. We did a survey with the kids after their enrichment class with some soft questions about, were you excited about coming to class? Did you make new friends? Did it help you want to come to school in the morning? And, they're kids, so they all said yes. But also, we looked at who was taking the classes. One of our goals when we leveraged the PTA to support us with this chunk of money was we wanted to make sure that all of our kids, particularly the kids whose families may not pay, have the ability to pay for the classes on their own, were participating.
Right.
And then we saw that our participation of students in those after school classes matched our general population, if that makes sense. Like we have X number of students who are SED, that was also the percentage of kids who took the after school classes.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, anything else, trustees? Well, thank you and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
We appreciate your being here tonight. And now we have Ms. Lambert on Castro.
Good evening again. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about Castro one more time. Overall, last year we maintained the great gains we had in our first 2 years. And tonight I would like to discuss some of the factors that contributed to simply maintaining, and also our actions that we'll be taking this year to accelerate student progress again. And as Cindy mentioned, oops, we go past the data slides. So in ELA, we increased just by 2 percentage points, so we didn't meet our goal. The major action I wanted to highlight for ELA was, it ties into what we presented earlier this evening with the project-based learning, but to increase the rigor, we did a lot of professional development in the depth of knowledge throughout, and that led to the rigor of questionings increasing, but we saw not as much growth in the tasks the students were assigned. We're kind of in our comfort zone at DOK level 2. And what we're trying to do is increase the amount of student experiences at DOK level 3. It's important they get all 4 DOK levels, but we want to make sure there's a balance between all 4 and not predominantly at one level.
And for people that are listening, DOK is depth of knowledge.
Depth of knowledge, thank you. And then in our key actions for this year, the first one talks about our implementation of PBL, or project-based learning, in 4th and 5th grade, and consistent implementation of guided reading. I'm sorry, that's a typo. It should say in grades 2 and 3. And also new this year is cafe literacy. You may have heard of it as Daily 5 for ELA or Daily 3 for math in our kinder and 1st grade. And those are the PBL in 4th and 5th grade and the cafe literacy in kinder and 1st are quite dramatic changes for us. And we're confident we're going to see big gains in our achievement to start moving us forward again. And again, the increase in rigor through the depths of knowledge, professional development. And then in math, we declined by 2, so of course we did not meet our goal. And a major action I would want to highlight from here is toward the end of last year, and actually a couple of grades all year long, but a reteaching cycle during the core instruction for math. And that's going to tie into what I'm going to say about our actions for this year. So within core instruction, not after school, not during the RTI period, but within core instruction, stopping and doing a little mini reteaching cycle before moving on. So at a point of no return, if the students didn't get this, then the next few lessons would be difficult. So the teachers would identify that and do a mini reteaching. And so for our key actions for this year is all grades will be doing that reteaching cycle in math during core instruction. And the other important one is we switched away from ST Math for the majority of students to Zearn, because Zearn is more aligned to Eureka Math, but more importantly, or as importantly, you can target it to specific skills that you're working on at that time. It can be used for blended learning during the core instruction, but also for additional instruction outside of regular hours for tutoring. And also our use of the district math coach. We're very happy that there is a district math coach this year, and our site coach is working very tightly with her to focus on math instruction at all grades, but particularly in the upper grades. And for the achievement gap goal, we kind of list out all of our subgroups for this. In ELA, we went up by 1, but that wasn't meeting our goal, down by 1 in math. For the RFEP students, we did meet our goal in ELA with an increase of 4 percentage points, but for the RFEP students in math, a decrease of 4. Our at-risk of LTEL students, we did decrease that number from 21 to 16, and our goal was 16. And our low SES subgroup went up, which I did not put in there. Major actions from last year where the interventions before and after school, we have many happening through the teachers on staff, as well as additional agencies or organizations volunteering to come in. And one change we did make, and we actually adjusted last year mid-year because we decided that it wasn't being as effective as it needed to be. And that was to have, instead of 5 days of RTI on literacy, 4 days on literacy and 1 day on math and science. And that model just wasn't working, and it actually ended up taking away from literacy. Wasn't sufficient to make a difference in math, and was taking away from literacy. So we adjusted that partway through the year. And then key actions for this year that will be continuing is the providing a variety of experiences and activities for our students. It's very important for anyone that has the need for more background knowledge, creating connections, making learning meaningful. It's very important at our school that this happens for everyone, and also increasing the individualized and small group instruction. And I talked about some of those strategies already. And throughout that is utilizing the SIOP strategies, whether it's reteaching or core instruction. For us, SIOP is very important to meet the needs of our students. And the human capital goal was 90% of teachers will report feeling confident in the use of common formative assessment data, or CFAs. We reached 80%, and the 20% that didn't feel fully confident, they were feeling that their frequency wasn't enough to say they were fully confident. So yes, they were using CFAs and felt comfortable building them and analyzing the data, but we're wishing they were doing it more often. And our major action from last year was student progress review meetings. We do them every 6 to 8 weeks with the principal and the coach. The grade level teams meet. And the key action for this year is it's a required part of the planning days, both the district provided planning days and the site provided planning days, to spend a portion of their time actually developing the CFA right there in the planning day. And that's where the accountability is going to come in. And our next goal of inclusive and supportive culture, our goal was 85% of students will report feeling safe and respected, and we got to 83. And our attendance goal was 96.5, we got to 96.23. So an increase over the year prior, but not at the 96.5 that we wanted. And our major action last year were the SCEF, the at-risk coordinator. In principle, we meet individually with families that are having attendance difficulties to find out what's causing them. And then we line up the resources that are available to these families for what's getting in the way of attendance. And a key action from this year are structured options that ensure that all are aware of the same school expectations. That's part of PBIS, to make sure that our atmosphere is calmer and more positive. And PlayWorks is a big part of making sure that happens. And I think you're all very aware of what PlayWorks is and the advantages of PlayWorks. Castro has to have a parent engagement goal because we're a Title I school. And so our parent engagement goal was, we did meet that. 75% of families will have attended 5 or more school events. Activities or trainings, anything counts as long as they're involved at school. And we did meet that goal. And our 5-star family dinner, or 5-star family incentive program, every time they attend something, they get credit for it. And if at 5 or more, they're all honored at a dinner at the end of the school year. And that's a team effort. All of the staff are involved with preparing it and serving it and setting up for it, being there that night. It's really a fun event to see. And our goal next year is to increase from 75% of families reaching that to 80% of families reaching it. And an additional action that we're going to do is focus on identifying who the 20% are, or 25% are, that didn't meet that goal last year, and do some personal outreach with that 25% to see what we can do to support them in being able to be involved at school. And what worked this year? I just want to highlight our use of data from common formative assessments, from the district benchmarks, from SBAC, all sorts of information we gather. We're a really tight professional learning community, very transparent. Everyone sees everyone else's results and talks about them, both in grade level and at our staff meetings, at our school leadership team meetings, and that's something that we're very proud of. What we want to intensify is drilling down tighter on more discrete data this year. So to keep it up, but we always have to get better. And something that I already discussed that didn't work was that modification of win time. And so we know now what we need to do is keep the focus, and we'll find other ways. We do have other ways to intervene with math that I already discussed. So what changes are we going to make? That cafe literacy, the project-based learning, intensify the guided reading in 2nd and 3rd grade, and they are actually going to get their feet wet in project-based learning in the 3rd trimester. And also getting out of our comfort zone with WIN and not rely on WIN to do the reteaching, but make sure our core instruction gets better so that we don't have as much reteaching to do in WIN. And we also know that we have to reteach during core instruction and not just wait for the RTI time. And last but definitely not least, as I mentioned, SIOP is really important to us because it impacts every student at Castro and it's necessary for their success. So we really, have a rotation of PD through our staff meetings, and we work on all of the SIOP features, the district ones plus the site ones that we've chosen. Any questions?
Thank you. Trustees, questions?
I have questions. I'm sorry. I'm having issues doing searches on the presentation. I think the system's just a little stuck. But I'll go with. I'm surprised to hear that ST Math is less effective. Do you have any rationales to why that's happening now with the kids?
I missed the first half. Sorry.
ST Math is less effective.
Hmm.
So how do we reach that conclusion?
So ST Math is non-language based. So it works with some students that really like that mode of learning, but the quantity of students that works for it just isn't sufficient. So we actually still do use it, just not to the extent that we're using Zern now.
Can you explain a little bit about Zern? I don't mean to interrupt,
No,
but
go
just
ahead.
since we're on the topic, I was going to ask about Zern. What is Zern, and why is it better for some students?
Zern is a math program that is actually used at several schools in the district, and it's used during core instruction, part of blended learning, but it is very targeted. You can pick the certain skill that you were actually teaching the day before or that half hour before, and then some can go on the computer while you're pulling a small group. Whereas ST Math is students were wherever they were at that time, and it didn't necessarily match what was just taught. But Zern can be matched very specifically.
Thank you.
And it actually reteaches the students. So it doesn't just send them through lessons if it sees they're stuck. It will put in a lesson, a reteaching lesson for them.
So I was also asked by some parents, and I'm just going to share the question. Is there any plan at Castro to have like an after-school tutorial center or hours of extra help for kids? I know at Graham they had it last year. I don't know if they will have it again this year, but are you all thinking about that as a possible option, or?
Yeah, we have almost every teacher at Castro has after-school tutoring for at least 8 weeks of the year, if not more. And that, depending on the grade level and when they choose to do it, usually they wait for the heavy hitting skill in math and do the reteaching there. We also have 3 times a week in the morning from 7:30 to 8. And the change this year is I asked the parents to choose to help the parents to feel involved. You choose, do you want your child to get this extra half hour in math on Zern or on ELA in Lexia, which is a similar program just for ELA, that's self-paced. And the good news this year is we're up to 120 students every morning, 3 days a week. That's just a little under half the school in the cafeteria getting that extra half-hour instruction.
Thank you.
Terry, I have a question.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I see across your ELA subgroups. I know you didn't potentially meet the goal for the year, but things are improving. I just have a question about your students with disabilities and how that score seemed to dramatically drop. Is that due to a change in overall population or some other factor?
I don't think it's due to a change in population. That's an anomaly that we're still discussing and working out how that that happened, because you'll notice in math there was no such anomaly. It was just an ELA. So we're still working on what that was about.
Okay, thank you.
And I had noticed that there were drops from in math. The kids that were in 3rd and 4th grades in 2015 and 16, they kind of fell off by the time they got to 5th grade, and then the younger kids were doing much better. Is that because the different programs that you're using, or do you have a sense about?
I don't think it's the different programs. I think it's where they hit the point where the math is so much more complex that if they had any gaps at all, that's where it really starts to show up. And also teachers, that the complexity of math at those grades, they really need to be up on their skills. That's why we're very excited about the math coach. And our site coach is new. She was our TI teacher last year, and she's a new coach this year. They're already working very tightly together and with the 4th and 5th grade team. And also language, if they're behind in language skills at all, or in reading and writing, it really impacts math at those grade levels. It's very language heavy, both in the curriculum and in the assessments, just very language heavy. So that's where it all starts to come together. And so we need to intensify our efforts at those grades to make up for that.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. I hope that that you're.
We
able
all
to-
will.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a tough one too, because when you look at the issue of testing, if the child doesn't have that frame of reference, or depending how they deal with stress, if they don't have the basic concept of knowledge of the language, and then to problem solve at that level, as the test questions get more difficult because you answer them correctly, that to get to that point is very difficult when they don't have a frame of reference of the language, or the workings of the language, or the concepts of problem solving. So that's a big issue. I don't care if it's a charter school issue or a public school issue. If you don't have that background, when you take the tests, you don't do so hot. So I'm glad that at least we're taking the time to be able to intervene in different ways to get them going.
They're very aware of the challenge.
And I'm glad that you're drilling into the data. So yeah, that's you can't fix it if you don't know about it, right?
Correct.
So
thank you.
any other questions, trustees or members of the, if not, any members of the public wishing to comment or ask questions? Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Lambert.
Thank you very much.
Shall we tackle one more before we take a break? Yeah. Okay. Ms. Gomez, Crittenden.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Sonia Gomez from Crittenden Middle School. We are thrilled to be here and to share with you guys a story of Crittenden Middle School. So I'll use this clicker. As you can see by our demographics, we have grown by about 50 students in the last couple of years, while our subgroups have maintained enrollment. Again, I will go through the data slides as well. Oh, too far. Okay. Last year, our goal for academic achievement in ELA was to increase the percent of student proficiency from 63 to 67%. We made some gains, but we did not meet our goal. We attribute this to not having a common pacing guide to guide our teachers to assure that all standards were being taught throughout the school year, as well as not diving deep into our data to adjust instruction as needed. We offered last year our targeted skills boot camps for our students who were near standard during our lunchtime. And because of the time constraint, we didn't have much or enough time to provide some real meat instruction to our students. And therefore also we had attendance who was really inconsistent because our students were offered the opportunity to be part of this, but it wasn't mandatory as well. We also had some time for our teachers to have some common planning time to implement our study sync curriculum. And a majority of our time we found that was a focus on our writing instruction and so forth. Our standards and our standards were missed by doing so, by focusing so much on the writing instruction piece. Our goal this year for academic achievement in ELA is to increase the percentage of students meeting and exceeding standard from 60 to 64%. And here are some of our strategies. And our total expenditure. One of the things we're focusing on this year as well is we're in the process of creating a homework center after school. And this is going to be run by our teachers and our high school volunteers as well, helping our students in ELA as well as math. Our key action items to achieve this goal this year is to, again, to go ahead and develop a common pacing guide for trimester, by each trimester by grade. And this will provide our teachers some guidance as well to assure that all standards are being taught throughout the whole school year, as well as monitoring the progress of standards. We will also implement this year, we're really fortunate to have two big initiatives on our campus, which is response to instruction, RTI, and co-teaching. And by doing so, the students will receive targeted instruction to address their needs. In academic achievement in math, for last year, our goal was to increase the percentage of student proficiency from 55 to 59.5. Although we did make some gains as well, we did not meet our goal. We attribute this to not having inconsistent scaffolding and differentiating throughout the different grade levels in math, as well as not looking deep into our benchmark data to drive and reteach if needed throughout the whole school year. We had some work with our POC teams on developing common formative assessments. Although some POC teams were more successful using data to inform instruction, some weren't as successful. This year, our goal is to increase the percentage of students from meeting to exceeding standard from 56 to 60%. And here are some of our strategies. We are going to implement blended learning models in all grade levels, and this will allow our teachers to work with our students in a small group to meet their needs and to individualize some support to our students. Another key action item for this goal is to review student data on a more frequent and more depth with our teachers, and this will help our teachers monitor progress of all standards that are being taught throughout the year. In this ELA by subgroup, we see some gains in our EL students, our English learner students, and our students with disability as well. We also see some gains here in math subgroups by our English learners, but we also see some work to be done as well. I do want to, sorry, the last one. By proficiency, sorry, next one. Here, this one. I also want to highlight here that we do see some gains as well, but we also are aware of the significant drop our RFEP students had in the performances this last year. And we also have seen that we've had some gains in our reclassification rate in the last couple of years. For our goal for achievement gap for last year was to reduce the number of long-term learners by 10%. We are thrilled to say that we had our students, 5 students reclassify, and we've met that goal. And we attribute that to a lot of the work that our ELD teacher had last year with coaching. Through coaching, she had a lot of support with creating a pacing guide as well as feedback on a consistent basis. We also attribute that to working our staff working with our students and our families to talk about the reclassification process. as well as our implementation of SIOP across all content areas. We see the gains that our EL students had the last couple of last year, and we attribute that to a lot of our SIOP work that our teachers are implementing across all content areas. Okay. And then this year, our goal is to reduce the reduce by 10% our long-term English language learners, as well as addition to this year, we want to add the goal of RFEP students and to increase the percentage of RFEP students meeting or exceeding standard. And here are some of our key strategies for that. As well, we noticed again the gains or success we had last year with our monitoring through our SCEF and our LPAC coordinator. So we're going to do the same thing again this year, continue that work, also add our RFEP students to that monitoring system that our SCEF and our LPAC coordinator will have. And this will help us kind of provide some more timely support for our students, but also include our stakeholders, our parents to that mix as well. We found that very valuable last year, where not only our SCEF and our LPAC coordinator met with parents and students, but also our ELD teacher had a consistent meeting with parents and discussed, the progress in English 3D or Read 180. So it was very successful. Again, we also see that SIOP was a very great place to start last year with implementation that we had. Our teachers, students received strategies not only in their core classes, but also in PE and electives. So they saw this across all subjects, which was very successful. So our teachers are implementing our second year of SIOP this year, and we're looking forward to that work as well. Okay. Now, I do want to introduce our assistant principal, Mr. Barajas, who will share with you our human capital goal and our inclusive and culture goal.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In the area of human capital, our goal in 2017 and 18 were as follows: to create a professional learning community and develop common assessments using data to drive instruction. Teachers would inform the whole staff of the professional learning community findings, and teachers would attend 6 professional development trainings on SIOP. In this area, we only partially met our goal. We attribute this to the PLC work teachers put in, which helped improve their capacity in the area of SIOP. They were able to develop and administer common assessments. However, we were not able to see the change in the classroom practice based on the data we looked at. In 2018-19, our goal in the area of human capital will remain the same. We are looking to build on the previous year's goal. Teachers will work in professional learning communities to develop common assessments and use data to drive instruction. Teachers will present to the staff their PLC findings and share best practices twice a year. Our key action items in this area is to provide teachers dedicated time in PLCs to analyze data and make informed instructional decisions. This will allow us to use PLC time to utilize better data-driven instruction. PLC teams will be able to share their PLC cycles and create data points for all teachers. And teachers will be able to focus on 3 to 4 RFEP students and the interactions with them. Our second key action item in that here is provide professional development time for teachers to focus on SIOP. This will allow us to more effectively implement PD multiple times throughout the year. Attendance and suspension. In 2017-18, Crittenden did not have an attendance goal, but as you can see, Crittenden has steadily maintained and even increased in our attendance. We have hovered around the 96th percentile for several years. Our suspension data shows a steady decline over the last 4 years. Last year's goal in the area of inclusion and supportive culture, school suspensions for students with disability was to be reduced from 15 to 10%. Unfortunately, Crittenden did not meet this goal. On the contrary, we actually increased by 1%. We attribute this increase to the lack of school-wide alternative discipline consequences and programs for students. Our action item in this area were to explore alternative to suspensions and obtain training in restorative justice. We were able to research 2 programs. The second action item there was guidance counseling will provide multi-tiered system of support and intervention. We were able to have our school counselor meet with counseling agencies to coordinate services for our students. In 2018-19, our goal in the area of inclusion and supportive culture is to reduce the number of school suspensions from 25 to 22 and increase our daily attendance rate from 96.69 to 97%. Our key action items in this area will be guidance counseling program will be revised and refined for continued use of the multi-tier system of support and intervention created in 2017-18. This will allow us to provide an environment that helps students academically and socially increase their achievement. The second action item is to begin the process of implementation in PBIS and continued restorative justice circles. This will allow us to train our staff in restorative justice practices and PBIS, which will emphasize sustainable community building and school-wide discipline that involves all our stakeholders. As we reflect on what worked, EL and LTEL monitoring was consistent. Why it worked is monitoring was consistent and allowed students to gain information on a clear path for reclassification. What we also saw that worked is coaching. Regular meeting with coaches improved instructional practices in the classroom for our teachers. And the PLC structure, instructional planning time, was provided for all our staff members.
Okay, what we reflected on and that didn't work for us last year, like I mentioned before, is, sorry, oh, a little too ahead here, is not having a common pacing guide in ELA. Teachers didn't have a roadmap to support and make sure the guide them to assure that we had our standards being taught throughout the school year, as well as not analyzing our data on a regular basis to adjust instruction as needed. We are happy for the work ahead of us. Like Mr. Barajas mentioned, we are working on PBIS this year and looking forward to that work with our staff, as well as our students and our families. This is going to be, again, work involving everybody around us, as well as continue our work and building capacity with our teachers, but increasing the effort there too. That's through our walkthroughs, through coaching and feedback, not only on a regular basis, on a regular classroom, but also working with our coaches individually as well as across town with Graham to support the work we do as a middle school. As well as creating a pacing guide, like I mentioned, for our ELA, especially by focusing on each trimester by grade level and using data to drive everything we do throughout the year, and consistently checking our benchmarks and analyzing data really in depth to understand the need for reteaching and adjusting our instruction. As well as we mentioned before, monitoring. I think one of the big successes we had, like I mentioned before, is our monitoring process we had with the work we did with our SCEF and LPAC and our ELD teacher, and adding our RFEP students to that monitoring system this year. So we're looking forward to that work. So again, as a team, we're looking forward to working together to achieve great things for our students and our staff. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Trustees, questions, comments?
I have questions. So for your suspension rates, what's the demographics look like for that? Are they mostly Latino students? Is it a toss-up? What is it?
It's a mixture, but we do have a lot of our Latino students who are more suspended than others.
Yeah. Okay. And the community engagement facilitator or the intervention officer, when that happens, they step in, they try and help out.
Yeah.
What's the plan like for
suspensions, you mean? Yes, we believe that working as a team is really important in our office and our school. So we not only involve our at-risk facilitator, but we also involve our SCEF and even our counselor. We're lucky to have a counselor since last year, and that's been such a blessing for our school because she's able to work with not only the academic piece, but the social emotional piece, because that also has a lot to do with our students who are not doing so well, not only academically, but also in behavior. So we try to kind of build some support system around not only the student, but the family as well, and our teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, again, I'm asking questions, but I'm not
Yeah,
asking
no,
questions
that's
to
fine.
put people on the spot.
That's fine.
I need an answer, right? I'm curious. Okay, so I think in the last one here, data was not analyzed on a regular basis to drive changes to instruction.
Yeah.
what exactly does that mean? Was that the teacher not looking at the information, or was that the principal, or what does that mean?
We provided some time for our teachers through PLC to work on data, but I think having more time of that work been really beneficial for our teachers and as well as our admin as well. We were part of the PLC, group in the meetings, but I think having more consistency with that would have been really helpful.
Okay, my final question again.
Yeah.
This was brought up by the parents for this school too, and then eventually for Graham. Are there any plans to have a tutorial center after school to help out
Yes.
students? And if so, what's that look like? And how do parents find out about that?
So I just mentioned that we are in the works right now, planning for that. We have a homework center starting hopefully in a week. And the plan is to start with a couple days and then grow as we need it. But our focus right now is our priority is for our students who are at risk, our students who have a GPA or 2.0 below, to support those students. And we're fortunate to have our teachers we have 2 math teachers right now and 2 ELA teachers who are going to be tutoring as well in that after school program. But we're also inviting our high school students because I think a lot of our middle school students look up to the high school students, and that's a really great connection there. So we're excited about that work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other trustees, questions? I had one on the pacing guides. You said that you're going to be developing pacing guides and are optimistic that is going to show improvement in ELA. Is that a collaborative thing? Do the teams how does that happen?
Thank you for that. That's a good question. We're actually working with Graham as well, which is a great work because we want to be aligned with both middle schools. So our instructional coaches have been wonderful. They are working with both sites. And we also have release days for that work to happen on a consistent basis. But it is working as a team, as an ELA department, but also working alongside with Graham to support that.
So it would be the teachers that are in
Create.
language arts working together, like the 6th grade teachers
Exactly.
across the site, 7th grade.
Yes,
Okay.
to create each
Great.
trimester.
Well, I hope it's helpful for both schools.
Yes.
And Ms. Wilson, I'm keep looking over at the phone. Did you have any questions or comments for Ms. Gomez?
I don't. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. I'm also excited about the restorative justice that you're
Yes,
doing.
we're
I've heard
excited too.
wonderful things
Our
about
teachers are
that.
looking forward to it. They really are. So we're excited for that work.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we take a quick? Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. It's 8:41. Should we take like a 5-minute break before we move on to Huff and Montaloma? Sorry that you guys are at the end, but okay. Thank you.
Hopefully not.
I haven't got into the budget yet. I just started.
Good to know.
They have a jug of it. They're bringing that great value. I'm a friend who's gas player. Well, no, I know because you look at that. Oh, that's the. How do you guys want?
sending the check. Well, I had an idea today. Next one. Yeah, how we've been doing it is I have basically everything on the plate. 4 minutes. It's just the agenda becomes the notes. Kind of how we do it. And I've double checked the checklist, so I'll go ahead. Well, that's the one that goes into. Oh, okay. Yeah, actually show the. We don't. We don't. It's really the. We have to get the habit of showing. All right. Cool beans. Oh, no worries. It's okay. It's fine. Not to worry. Don't worry about it, Laura.
Well, so did I. I think I have 2%. It's a Dell. It's a Dell.
Oh, your laptop.
You know, there are worse things than not being able to. Yeah. And one of the city did come up with a plan that 777 things up at 5, and then I couldn't figure out what to explain to the other things. All right. Are we ready to get started? I know everybody wants to go home. Trustee Gutierrez. Okay, now we have the presentation on Huff.
Okay. Good evening, trustees. My name is Jeff Chang, and I'm the principal at Huff. It's my pleasure to present to you Huff's 2018-19 site plan. I'm hopeful that through this presentation, you'll hear the themes of alignment, balance, and focus as we go through the year. So we're just going to keep going through the demographics like all the other presentations. You've seen all these, including the overall data, and go straight to our results from last year. So looking back at our ELA goal from last year, I'm happy to report that we did exceed our goal. We went up 2% from 88% met or exceeded to 90%. We believe that this was due to increased familiarity with the ELA curriculum, a new focus on ELA through RTI, and an increase of engagement through project-based learning. And so this year, we want to keep it moving up, going up from 90% to 91%. And I'll go to the next slide to discuss the specific strategies. So alignment of goals and actions are going to be key to our success in ELA. Already, our teaching staff have created professional goals that are closely aligned to school priorities, SIOP, RTI, PBL. We'll also be aligning our activities, special events, and enrichment to the profile of a graduate in ways that we've outlined in our kind of mini strategic plan, our roadmap to the capstone. And the PBL is key here. We're in the second full year of implementing projects that engage students on a higher level and challenge them to do real-world tasks. And also, our PTA is going to be, has always been, generously involved in the support of our school. And I'm including our PTA-sponsored grade level activities in our site plan this year because it's a big part of this alignment strategy to our strategic plans. Each grade level team is determining which experiences will support the profile of graduate attributes. And for example, in first grade, students will learn design thinking to bolster their creativity and problem solving. In second grade, communication is key as teachers are finalizing plans right now to bring public speaking and improvisation classes to students. So by the end of fifth grade, students will have had plenty of opportunities to be instructed on and practice with the profile attributes so that they're more than ready to complete a capstone project. Moving ahead to math, the main reason we were flat or slightly lower last year by 1% is, I think, because we're so focused intently on ELA. We need to rebalance our resources to allot energy to improving math performance this year while not letting ELA slip either. And so this year, our goal is a 2% increase in our MET exceeded rate on the math CAS test. We'll go on to the details in the next slide. So we'll focus on using SIOP strategies to help us improve in math. We will be teaching and checking for understanding of explicit language objectives for math. In addition to being able to perform math tasks, students will also be taught to explain their thinking in multiple literacy-influenced ways. Also, as we look at data, not just at our site, but across the school district and in our daily experiences as teachers, we know that a lack of fluency in basic calculations really is a key hindrance for some students as they enter middle school. Therefore, we will develop and implement plans for ensuring that all students are fluent with their math facts, especially multiplication, before they graduate from fifth grade. So I'm going to go quickly through the next few subgroup slides. I do just want to point out that we have a relatively low number of ELs, SED, and SWD. House numbers fluctuate pretty easily because of the low denominators. Just going through quickly. I do want to stop here for a moment. If we slice the data by language proficiency, we see that our RFEPs are meeting standards at the exact same high rate as our students overall, despite minor variance across the last few years. And after dropping 2 years ago, EL performance is ever so slightly up, although again, with the small numbers, we're talking about individual students here. It's really important to hone in on those factors. Similarly, we have a similar picture in math as well. For reclassification, our rate jumped up 8% last year, returning to 2016 levels. I think the change is mainly due to the variance of individual students once again. So coming to our achievement gap goals, last year our aim was to reduce the total number of students who are at risk of becoming LTELs from 2 to 0. It just felt like 2 to 1 was just, we should just go for all. We did reclassify. We were able to reclassify one student, which is cause of celebration. But we didn't meet our goal of both. There were still individual challenges, including, as Principal Nguyen mentioned, the needs of ELs with disabilities is a key thing here, and it's an area of professional development, coaching, and feedback for us this year. This year, we also have a handful of kids who are becoming or at risk of becoming long-term English learners, and we want to reduce this number by as many as we can, at least one. We also want to make sure our RFEPs are supported, continue to be supported, and ensure that they keep performing better than the year before. So how do we plan to do this? Well, we are going to hear about SIOP again. It's a significant initiative district-wide, and it's a big part of HUF's strategies too. Math is an area where we're going to apply SIOP strategies, techniques heavily through language objectives, increasing academic verbal interaction between students during math class, and ensuring that students are taught and know how to use various cognitive strategies. Like last year, we will commence a Saturday Academy for at-risk long-term English learners, taught by the same experienced teacher as last year and utilizing Benchmark Advanced ELD materials and English 3D materials. Teachers will deliberately plan focused check-ins with students who struggle multiple times during each lesson to better provide the differentiated experience that students need. For human capital, last year, happy to report that we did meet our goal of increasing common planning around pacing guides and increasing our results-based planning. So really an increased focus on data. We followed pacing guides with fidelity, and teachers' collaboration notes show a clear use of data to plan and replan instruction, which was not as present before. We also improved our Kid Talk protocols. So this year, it's about the next iteration of professional development around the 3 focused areas of SIOP, RTI, and PBL, and by extension, the profile of a graduate. So how do we do this? Well, all of our teachers have already set up monthly coaching check-ins with our instructional coach to work on problems of practice and to reinforce the alignment of professional learning. We'll be providing a variety of trainings on RTI, PBL, and SIOP across the year. The coaches and I, the math coach, our instructional coach and I meet regularly to strategize which sessions to place where in the yearly schedule of Wednesday staff meetings. And I think really importantly, we want to get our classified staff involved too. I think of like our 70 employees, 35 of them, like fully half of them are our classified staff. And based on surveys from last year, sometimes a lot of classified staff felt like they weren't getting the feedback that they needed, that they didn't feel as much of a part of the community as perhaps the teachers did. And so I want to actively address that issue. We started last spring. We're going to continue. We're going to get our classified staff involved in knowing where we're headed. And monthly classified staff meetings will train staff on important topics related to our roadmap to the capstone, our district strategic plan, and our focus areas of PBL, RTI, and SIOP. I'm happy to report that our suspensions went significantly down last year. We used alternatives to suspension. It was also my second year as an elementary school principal, so redid my expectations a little bit. In terms of inclusive and supportive culture, we did meet our goals from last year. We had a wonderful multicultural festival in February, and regular celebrations of languages and cultures started happening via the morning announcements. Actually, every week I say the morning greeting in a different language, and so I've been learning how to say good morning in like 20 different languages. And that's been really, really key, and looking to build on that. And I already mentioned the reduction of suspensions. We had more use of after-school detention when needed, community service, counseling. So this year, we're going to continue with similar goals and also add in an area of increasing volunteerism, right? We get plenty of offers from parents to volunteer. We have lots of parent volunteerism already, but we want to keep increasing this not only to get the help we need, but also to increase the connection of families to Huff. The thing I also want to highlight here is the idea of the student town hall. The aim here is to empower students to speak up about the issues that concern them at school. This idea was actually born from a second grade PBL project on government last spring. Students actually petitioned me. They wrote letters to me. They did PowerPoint presentations for me about ways that they wanted to get more involved in school decision making. And so like, how can I say no to that? Like, that's just good on all fronts. Like, it's just everything that we want. And so this is something I'm really excited to do more of this year. We're going to take steps to give students more of a voice in decision making. So that's going to be really exciting for me. So overall, taking a look at the big picture, when we focus on something intently, results improve. And we saw this in RTI and PBL. More kids did better on ELA assessments, and there was greater engagement in the areas that PBL touched most directly, social studies and science. We also, although we saw some success with our most at-risk populations, we can always do more, and we plan a larger investment of time and resources this year to meet the challenge. So we're aligning ourselves to school focus areas, balancing efforts to extend learning, enrich all students, and prepare them for the capstone project, while also addressing the needs of our most at risk is our greatest challenge. And it's something that we always have to keep in the front of our minds as we make decisions and adjustments in this year and the years ahead. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. Trustees, questions?
I have just one question. But Jeff, for your Saturday academies, how long does that go in terms of hours, and what time does it start?
Yeah, I've budgeted to go from November all the way to end of April.
And what time does it start?
It's 8:30 to 10:30 Saturday mornings.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tamara, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have just a couple. Hey, Jeff, I'm just curious about looking at your math subgroups. Your student with disabilities increased dramatically in this current school year. Is there any reason for that you know of? Is it another one of these anomalies?
I think
It nearly doubled.
Yeah, it's because the subgroup numbers are so low. I hesitate to draw any kind of overarching conclusions. I think our teachers have worked really hard to meet the needs of every kids or all the kids, and so it just worked out really well in terms of the testing and the kids from last year.
Yeah, that's great. And I have a question about the capstone. In what grade level does that start?
So in our kind of mini strategic plan, we call our roadmap to the capstone. Starting from kindergarten, kids are given opportunities to practice the profile of a graduate attributes, approximately 2 a year, all the way up until 4th and 5th grade, where they're going to take on larger and larger projects. And something I didn't highlight in here just because of time and space is that we actually this year are going to be kind of doing like a capstone, actually multiple capstone 1.0s. I went to the Children's Business Fair in Santa Clara last Saturday, and I think that's going to serve as inspiration for, I think, any grades. I think 2 through 5 this year is probably going to be most appropriate. Any grades to kind of take on a challenge of starting a business, hopefully like to benefit some nonprofit. This is in the early planning stages, and that's going to be done through our site council.
Okay, I was just curious because I know a lot of kids are going to be shuffling around, so I wasn't sure if I believe yours is the only school I've heard talk about this style of project. Maybe others have them under different names, so I just wasn't sure how much of this might be ported to other schools once you've seen success with it, or if there was a plan for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with anyone in the school district to make sure that as many students benefit.
Thank you.
Well, and of course, the capstone is part of the strategic plan, developing that. And we had a presentation in May about what Stevenson was doing with that. And I know other schools are working, starting work on that as well. So thank you very much. I'm very encouraged to see what you're doing with the project-based learning and how that rolls forward at each grade. And I think it's great for the kids. So
Thanks for your
thank
support.
you. Okay. And now, last but not least for the evening, we have Montaloma.
Thank you very much. I'm Gloria Higgins. I am the principal of Montaloma. It is always a pleasure to be in front of you and sharing the good news about the story of Montaloma. So thank you for the opportunity. Really excited to share our plan. Last year when I spoke to you, I talked a lot about cohesion in our plan. And this year, similar to Jeff, we have a theme. The theme at Montaloma is really about building our collective efficacy, and we're really looking to do that by leveraging our individual strengths and putting in some structures from our PLC practices and other successful practices to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So I am going to skip through the data slides like everyone else. Although they are very pretty pictures, I think.
They are.
When we talk about our ELA goal at Montaloma, I'm very pleased to report we exceeded that goal. We had a 12 percentage point increase in the percent of students meeting or exceeding standards in ELA at Montaloma. We attribute that largely to our successful RTI program, but also familiarity and confidence of teachers and staff related to having taught the same curriculum for 2 years and getting better and going deeper into that. Our new goal for next year is to increase by at least 4 percentage points so that we go from 62% to at least 66% meeting or exceeding standards. And the strategies that we used last year, a lot of them will continue from last year because we did have so much success with ELA, but we are adding some parts to our RTI program. We're layering some more standards from our language arts standards into our RTI program. When we first implemented RTI at Montaloma, we really saw a need to focus on the literacy standards, getting kids reading at grade level. We've had a great deal of success with that. And so now we're broadening the scope of our RTI program to include other standards from the ELA bank of standards. So that's what you're going to see us doing this year. When we look at math, again, I'm very pleased to report we met our goal. We exceeded it actually by 1 percentage point. That actually came out to 2 students. We watched them very closely. We're very proud of that. Every single student matters. And we really attribute the success in our math program to the 3rd grade team leading the way with some blended learning practices. That was very successful. It gives us confidence that Zern and the PLC practices we use there are successful practices that we want to expand this year. So I did notice a typo in the presentation. I apologize. It's an increase of 5 percentage points from 51% to 56% for our math goal. And you see the strategies listed there and the expenditures for that. I talked a little bit about this already. The blended learning practice is the practice that I really want to highlight there. And the rationale is we saw great success with that in some of our grade levels. So we're expanding that already. Like Terry and many other principals, we're very pleased to have a math coach in the district. It's been wonderful to work with her this year so far. I'm sure that will continue. We're really supporting that blended learning implementation in more grade levels at Montaloma. We've also added some interventions and extensions for math. Our RTI program, Win Time, really does focus on ELA, but we want to build in those RTI opportunities in math as well, especially in our 3rd through 5th grade. So our RTI teacher for those grade levels supports the math block for 4th grade 3 days a week. We've partnered with Just Math for 2 days a week to support some of our at-risk populations with their math performance. And we're also building some extensions, most notably with Math Olympiad, that gives the classroom teachers an opportunity to reteach on a weekly basis some key concepts from that week's math lessons to other students who perhaps were not exceeding yet. Again, I'm going to skip through some of the data slides. The general trend, though, that we see when we look at the subgroups at Montaloma is we saw increases in 4 out of 5 of our most at-risk significant subgroups. We're very proud of that. We had great gains for our students with disabilities, our students who are in low socioeconomic background households. So we're very pleased about that. Skip through there. We did not meet our achievement gap goal. We had a goal to decrease the percentage of students at risk of becoming LTELs by 10 percentage points. It was a lofty goal. We were able to decrease from 19 to 15 students from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. That was about 3 percentage points. So the hypothesis there is we had some interruptions to the staffing and the delivery of our intervention program for those students. And we were inconsistent and not as effective as we might have been about progress monitoring for them. So you're going to see in our goal for this year that changes and that becomes part of our focus. We do have 2 goals for decreasing the achievement gap this year. We want to increase the percentage of our reclassified students in ELA from 77 to 79%. And we want to decrease the number of students at risk of becoming long-term English learners by at least 1. We have 7 right now, so we want to go from 7 to 6. That's our goal. And you can see the expenditures there and the key strategies. SIOP remains a key strategy for us. We started with 4 features last year and have added 4 more features. So we're very strategic about which features we chose to add. Certainly 2 from the district are very relevant, scaffolding and interactions for students. We're also looking at adding meaningful interactions during our content delivery and also increasing the depth of knowledge and the higher order thinking tasks to advance our language learner skills. In our intervention time for designated ELD with our at-risk LTEL intervention and at-risk LTEL population, we are also using the English 3D curriculum. That time of day is taught by one of our RTI teachers as well. And we're looking at how to transfer some of our acquired skills from RTI with progress monitoring in that area. Our human capital goal, we had a goal to increase our collaborative culture, again, building that collective efficacy at our site. And yes, we did meet that goal. We had increased SMART goal cycles with our grade level teams. We had 2 cycles last year. We're looking to increase that to 3 cycles this year. Definitely attribute that to some increased time in staff meeting, just to find that time and the supports for teachers to get together, work together, learn from each other. Our goal this year for our human capital area is to increase the percent of teachers who are reporting they feel confident in their ability to help our most at-risk populations. Last year in our climate survey, we saw 45% of our teachers reported they felt confident to do that. So we're looking to increase that to at least 55%. The thing that I want to highlight, or the strategy I want to highlight in this area, is instructional rounds. This is an opportunity where teachers during release days get time to walk through other teachers' classrooms with an eye towards our SIOP strategies and how those are being implemented. It builds in some accountability, which is important, but I would say even more important, it gives teachers the opportunity to see other teachers in action, see best practices, and to also calibrate their understanding of what it really looks like to deliver something well. We all have individual strengths at Montaloma, but we're working on building our collective efficacy by leveraging those strengths. And we can only do that if we see each other and talk about the practices that we see. It's a really important part of the work that we do. Looking at our attendance and suspension data, you can see our decreases there. We were, again, ambitious with our goals. We had 3 goals for our inclusive and supportive culture goal area. We wanted to hit 97% attendance. We almost got there. We're at 96.34. That was an increase, but not quite meeting that goal. We wanted to decrease the number of referrals that we had for behaviors. We actually increased the number of referrals, but we're thinking that that's attributable to our increased awareness and our documentation of referrals. We got really systematic about our referrals last year. So I'm not too concerned about the increase in referrals, especially since we do see success with that decrease in suspensions. We decreased from 8 students being suspended for a total of 15 times to 6 students being suspended for a total of 8 times. And we really attribute that to the work we've been doing with responsive classroom. We look more on the preventative side than the reactive side for the behaviors. This year, we do still have ambitious goals in this area. There's nothing quite like a supportive culture to really accelerate success at a school. So we still have that goal of 97% for attendance. We want to continue to decrease the number of suspended students from 6 to 5, at least, or no more than 5. And we're offering 5 parent, our goal is to offer 5 parent education or informational opportunities with a minimum of 15 parent attendees. Building that collective efficacy means parents as well. They're part of the collaborative group at our school, and we want to bring them in. And we know from our climate survey that they're looking for more opportunities to participate at Montaloma. So we've put that into one of our goals. I talked a little bit about responsive classroom. We're also adding some PBIS strategies. We know that what we've been doing in the general population is working for 80% of our kids. We want to get to that next layer for the tier 2 interventions, and we're doing that with PBIS. For students who might need a little bit more than a pat on the back or positive reinforcement, they might need some more incentives, so we're doing that with PBIS. And the parent education events are already off and running. Again, it's a pleasure to work with a math coach. She'll be offering a math information night for our parents. And we started this week with a Take It Personally series, lecture series from Project Cornerstone, designed specifically for parents to bring them into that work as well. So overall, the big picture about what worked at Montaloma, or the big reflection that we have, is we're on the right track. We know that the PLC work that we're doing is working, coaching is working. The way we've integrated RTI and PLC, which really go hand in hand, has been very successful, especially in our language arts program. Responsive classroom has been very successful for the culture of our school. But we're on the right track, but we're not stopping, right? We got to keep moving. So looking to next year, one of the things that didn't work for us last year was our progress monitoring in areas beyond RTI. Very successful in RTI. It didn't transfer naturally, so we're putting in some structures and supports and some real intention behind progress monitoring in other areas, especially for our language learners and other struggling at-risk populations. And I'll take questions.
Thank you. Trustees. It's fine. I'm just
I keep
surprised
looking
that
over.
Trustee Gutierrez is ready to go. Ellen.
Yeah. So it's not quite in your presentation, but I know it's part of your school site work and the conversation that's happening at your school. At the beginning of the year, you had some large class sizes, and especially combo class, and you had some strategies for how to work with that, and you appeared to think that those strategies would help alleviate just the numbers aspect of this. Have those strategies helped with kind of the discomfort level that some parents had with the high numbers of students in classrooms?
Sure. Yeah, what Trustee Wheeler is talking about is we do have combination classrooms in all of our 4th and 5th grade classrooms. We knew based on enrollment patterns that we were going to need a combination class in 4th and 5th grade. And I have to give credit to the instructional coach, the RTI teachers, the classroom teachers, because we thought really hard about what is going to be a really good way to do combination classes rather than just putting one together based on numbers alone. So we thought about which content areas could be taught in a combination class. ELA makes a little more sense to teach in a combo class than math, so we structured the day where everyone's in a combo for ELA, but then they break out into straight grades for math. That resulted in some pretty large class sizes for 4th grade math, and we're supporting that with the RTI teacher 3 days a week. I talked about just math intervention and math Olympiad. Those are scheduled on days when the RTI teacher is not supporting the math block so that we can continue to reduce the numbers and parents are more comfortable with that. It actually was a great way to get some parents involved in volunteering for those programs. So we got to get 2 birds with 1 stone in terms of parent engagement and supporting the students in the content area. Thank you for asking.
I was actually going to also ask about the Math Olympiad. So you're doing that. It's not an extracurricular
It's during the school
offering.
day.
It's during the school day. Oh,
It's
that's
for
great.
students who are exceeding standards in math, but it is during the school day. And so it's an extension opportunity for them. And the students who were nearly meeting or not meeting standards have opportunities with their classroom teacher, credentialed teacher, for some reteaching opportunities at that time.
That sounds great. I love the way Math Olympiad approaches. There's so many different ways to approach a problem. It's not just like do it this way. And so it seems to fit well with those students that need the challenge and then also just Common Core, the deeper knowledge. So that's great.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Trustee Wilson? No? Well, I just want to
No questions.
Thanks. I just want to commend you on hitting so many goals and the great progress that Montaloma made. And I hope that that continues. And
too.
I think when Principal Chang was up there talking about sharing best practices, I had actually asked a question of Dr. Rudolph, and he said that you are all sharing best practices at the school when the principals meet. And it sounds like SIOP is huge. I think every single one of you mentioned SIOP. So I'm happy to hear that that seems to be working, even if it was a little bit rocky at first trying to master it. That's an effective strategy.
Thank
So.
you for asking that question about how we share ideas. There isn't one thing in my plan that didn't start as a conversation with one of my fellow principals or something that I adapted for them or frankly something I outright stole from them. So it's a wonderful team to work on. We really work very well together. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now moving to, we've got 3 board policies next. The first one is Board Policy 6174, Education for English Language Learners.
Can I
sorry.
ask, and I don't know the protocol for this, Dr. Rudolph, but now that all the principals have made their presentations, and I don't know if the expectation is for them to also stay for the entire meeting or so. you know, what do you want to do here?
So,
Yeah.
so we have a rotating basis with their PLCs. They typically stay. However, it's just board policies at this point. They're more than welcome to go. But normally they're on a rotation. And so each PLC has to have a representative there.
But we have to vote on the plans, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed that piece. Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. Do we have a motion to approve the 5 site plans, the excellent site plans that we?
Should we ask if there's any community comment and then? We did? Okay.
I thought we did,
All right.
yeah.
So I move that the board approve the single plans for student achievement for Bob Elementary School, Mariano Castro Elementary School, Crittenden Middle School, Huff Elementary School, and Montaloma Elementary School.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On a motion made by trustee Gutierrez and seconded by trustee Coladonato, the motion to approve the site plans for the 5 schools that presented this evening was approved unanimously. Okay, I keep jumping the gun tonight. Ms. Smith. Board policy number 6174, education for English language learners.
Good evening, members of the board. Yes, we would like you to approve this policy update upon first reading. Just to outline some of the major changes in the policy is that it updates the definitions for English language learners. It also aligns to Proposition 58 from January of 2016. The main difference is that most students at Mistral, the parents had to complete a waiver form because of Proposition 227 with regard to bilingual education and dual language programs. Parents had to complete the waiver to be able to have that as an option. That now is no longer a requirement. So this language updates that. And last but not least, there is a new list of approved programs. You'll see the sheltered instruction, observation protocol piece is mentioned, and other suggestions as well.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions or comments? Members of the public? Okay, do we have a motion to approve Board Policy 6174 regarding education for English language learners?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On a motion made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Gutierrez, the motion to pass Board Policy 6174 regarding education for ELL students was passed unanimously. Okay,
Thank
the
you.
next item is Board Policy number 6171, Title I programs.
For the Title I policy, Board Policy 6171, the core requirements connected to the federal legislation as also state regulations remain the same with Title I programming. However, there is inclusion of the U.S. State Code 20-6314 and 20-6321 included, which were not included in our previous policies. Those 2 sections of that code break down the fiscal requirements, which is 6321, a lot more language of supplant versus supplement, and 6314 has to do with how to manage school-wide programs, much more in detail than our previous policies. Also, there are added provisions about guidance on private school participation. And again, just looking at the allocations, just ensuring that we are over and above general allocations per student in non-Title I schools in comparison to non-Title I schools. I am asking at this time that the board approve Board Policy number 6171, Title I programs at a first reading as presented with the changes and additions herein.
Thank you. Trustees, questions or comments? I don't see any members of the public wishing to comment on this. So do I have a motion to approve the policy?
I move that the board approve Board Policy number 6171, Title I programs at first reading as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On a motion made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Gutierrez, Board Policy number 6171 regarding Title I programs was adopted unanimously. And Finally, we have English learner reclassification criteria.
Yes, I am requesting that the board approve the updated and revised English learner reclassification criteria. The change involves a simplistic shift and change in the English language proficiency assessment, what we formerly knew as CELT, to now the new LPAC score rating, and that we are including an LPAC level of 4 in our reclassification. All other areas remain the same. Requesting that the board approve the revised reclassification as presented.
Thank you. Questions or comments, trustees?
I have a quick question. So what's level 3 criteria
Sure. Under LPAC or the former CELT?
under LPAC?
Sure. The level 3, I don't know if you recall where we had those bands a few presentations ago. Well developed is level 4. Level 3 is right below that. The higher end of level 3, the state considers that to be proficient, but we are looking for higher levels of rigor and raising our expectations and going with a solid 4.
Why not the 3?
We do not believe the 3 is sufficient for students to gain access to content, curriculum, and based on our English language learner performance, we would like to see them at a level 4 for reclassification. There will be most likely more changes. We're still waiting for advisement and guidance from the state. In the interim, we've been given guidance just to proceed is what we've been using, but what we've been using, we cannot move forward with reclassification this year because it has the CELT former language. And the reason not 4 or 3 is we believe that level is not sufficient to gain access to curriculum.
Do the levels have names?
Yes, the level 3 is escaping me right now. So level 4 is well developed. Level 3, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Just give me a
There's no level 5, right?
No, there's only 4 levels, 1, 2, and 3.
And 4.
4, yes.
And so this reminds me of when we first had that conversation and we bumped it down from the highest. We bumped one of the passing scores from the highest level to a lower passing level. And one of the arguments was that even a lot of our English native students can't pass at the highest level of some of the English tests we give them. So why would we not use that same rationale in this instance and use 3 as a passing score on this test?
Sure, and thank you for giving me a moment. Level 3 is called moderately developed. At this level, English learners have oral language listening and speaking capacity, and I'm reading from the state breakdown of what a 3 is. So thank you for your patience. They can sometimes use English to learn and communicate in meaningful ways in a range of topics and content areas. They need light to minimal linguistic support to engage in familiar social and academic contexts. Again, those are familiar, not new. The other criterion that's included in that is that it says they need moderate support to communicate on less familiar tasks and topics. This test performance level corresponds to the lower range of bridging. So if you remember, we have emerging, expanding, and bridging. Those are 3 levels related to the ELD framework. And then we have the 4 levels that are related to the development of levels 1 through 4 on LPAC summative. If we look at a level 4, I'll read the difference in that from the 3. That might be helpful. English learners at this level have well-developed oral listening and speaking, written, reading, and writing skills. They can use English to learn and communicate in meaningful ways. So that is the difference between the 3 and 4 as far as the definition here, that are appropriate to many different tasks, purposes, and audiences in a variety of social and academic contexts. So in a level 4, you'll see the inclusion of a variety of different contexts that they communicate in meaningful ways per the state definition, versus a level 3 that will say they can sometimes use English to learn and communicate with a range of topics. So maybe going from sometimes to something of more of a solid, more consistent nature.
How would we get an idea of what score English natives would score on this test if a lot of them would get 3s? Because if so, then maybe we should hold English learners to a standard no higher than the English natives for this sort of thing?
I haven't looked at the scores of English native speakers of our English language proficiency exams at this point. I hear where your question is coming from.
Trustee Wheeler.
So yeah,
yield to you.
yeah. So my recollection of this conversation was that native English speakers sometimes couldn't pass the writing exam portion of this test.
Mhm.
So English language learners shouldn't be held to a higher standard than native English speakers in writing. But that was the only part of the test that they were talking about. They weren't talking about the entire test
Mhm.
that everybody, a lot of children were doing not very well on. It was the writing exam.
Mhm.
Just based on the descriptions of the levels 3 and 4 that Ms. Smith just read, I would think that you'd want all kids to get to level 4, whether they're, English language learners or not, because if they need that to access new information without moderate support, it seems to me like that's the standard that we should stick with.
So what's the LPAC consist of?
Sure. The LPAC consists of 4 areas, which is reading, listening, speaking, and writing. It is an exam administered by our LPAC coordinators at sites. Students will listen to passages, answer questions. That's the listening piece. The reading, of course, they read passages, answer questions. Depending upon the level and grade span levels will show the level of difficulty, whereas the younger kiddos in grades K1 may draw a picture and have to relay meaning or point to items when words are spoken. The older students read the passages, the writing or short writing prompts in response to a prompt that's given from the text.
So, Trustee Blakely, you weren't with us on the board when we tackled this issue about
No, I wasn't.
the difficulty of reclassification in general. So that's why Greg and I we're asking these questions,
Mhm.
because we found that there was a discrepancy in terms of equity in that regards. How can you expect an English language learner to be better than a native speaker when the native speaker can't even meet that standard? It makes no sense. So I'm hesitant about this. I'm not sure what the LPAC looks like. I hear what Ms. Smith is saying, but I don't know what the numbers look like because it's just started, right? So I'm a little hesitant about this. That's why we're asking these questions.
But
and
in
trying to get some
terms of
clarity.
the reclassification criteria, before they reclassify, they get more supports, right?
Sure, but that's not the issue, because we've heard that we've reclassified students in our presentations from the principals at a higher rate. But what I heard from almost every single principal was they needed to track their support of that student even more because they hadn't as much. And that's what threw me off. So I'm thinking, I don't know what that really means. All I know is that they're going to target those students because they see that they need help. I don't want this to be an issue where in the end, changing it to LPAC level 4, even though we don't really know what that means, might do the same thing that our standards were doing before.
I'm wondering if I misunderstood.
Punt on this, approving this tonight, and we evaluate a little better.
Can I ask a question? I mean, perhaps I misunderstood. I think to the extent there was some slippage from the reclassified students that weren't continuing to be monitored and get supports, it was that they needed more support. So perhaps they were being reclassified too soon. Perhaps.
I don't know. That's the big question, right? It could be that, or it could be that they weren't really tracked and they didn't really get as much support as they should have. How are we going to find that out?
If you look at the slippage and when it starts, I believe this conversation might have been 2015, trustees, the change. And if you look at the data from 2016 on, you'll start to see the slippage. And that was when we did ease the requirements for reclassification with eliminating the writing portion, which I was not a part of that full conversation that I think you may be referring to as far as the expectations, of the writing piece.
Well, what
Superintendent
information-
Rudolph?
The level 4 is also the same standard that you set to track whether or not a student becomes proficient on board code 1. So you've already set 4 as a criteria in order to determine whether or not we hit the 80% mark over the course of the time. I think this just brings it consistent with when a kid reclassifies, they will have to hit a level 4. And I think, I don't know if we can go back to that presentation, but if you look at the number of students who performed on the assessment, you'll see that when they score 4, they they were going to pass. However, if they scored a 3, the likelihood of them pass dropped significantly. And so we can look real quick to see if we can find board goal 1 and pull up that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. That would help.
I think I'm trying to understand what the concern is that you guys have, and I wasn't on the board then.
Do we have to approve this tonight, or can we just take it up at the next meeting after we've done additional research? Is there an urgency to this matter?
Yes and no. So I would like the board to be fully informed to make this decision, but I am going to pull up that other presentation. And it is a matter of alignment of items, and thanks for that reminder that we have set as far as markers of success and proficiency.
Trustees, can you help me understand what your concern is? Is it an equity concern? I'm not following the concern why you wouldn't set it at the higher level. And I think I'm just not appreciating it. So if you can explain it for me, that would be
We already
helpful.
went through this,
Yeah.
but
Go ahead.
I don't feel like going through it again.
I don't want to either.
Not tonight. So let's do a little more homework, and then we'll be ready to vote on it at a future meeting.
But I guess the question that staff asks is, what additional information are you looking for?
Some of the
So-
trustees would need some additional information about the background on this item, it seems.
I think, Dr. Rudolph, maybe it might help because of what happened a few years back. If maybe for the next, when it gets bring up at the next meeting, if we can see, like, I'm sorry to do this, but I'm a
Do you
fifth
wanna
grader.
see the
I
test?
just want
Is
to be
that
able to
what you-
see the difference between LPAC level 4 and an LPAC level 3, and then how it was before with the cell. And then look at the numbers and try and figure out in my mind if I understand what I'm seeing, and if level 4 makes more sense or if 3 doesn't. And if I could compare both, maybe that would open my mind up to look at things differently. But right now I'm a little hesitant because I don't see that in front of me.
But I guess the thing here is that the CELT is no longer a test.
Right,
So we
but I don't
no
know what
longer
LPAC.
administer that.
Right, but I don't know how the impact of LPAC really is with our students of our English language learners. I know it's been up for about maybe 2 years, so I think I'd feel more comfortable if I would be able to see if in that last 2 years we've had this test be administered. What does that look like for reclassification purposes? How does that look like at certain schools? Is there, and I mean, will that limit them in their reclassification and learning, or are we holding them back by going with level 4 as opposed to level 3? Or, I mean, what's the best approach? With the other approach, we knew that it didn't really work. With this one, I'm not sure what works. I guess that's my confusion.
This is the first time this proposal's been brought to the board, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's okay to look at something, find out if we need more information, and then bring it back to the next meeting.
I understand that, but what is the information that you're looking for? I don't think, unless you have a clear understanding, I'm
I
not sure.
don't.
I don't.
The tests are secure. We can't share the test. I heard, what does the test look like? I'm hearing, can we compare the CELT, right, to
Possibly.
the LPAC?
Right,
I
in terms
see
of
what you-
difficulty and rigor, right? That's because I knew what to expect with the cell, right? But I don't know what that looks like with the LPAC. I have no
Mhm.
idea. So how am I supposed to know if the writing requirement is still tough? Or how am I supposed to know if level 4 as a whole is what used to be in the level that we had before for cell? How do I know that they're the same or they're different? How do I know if it's not going to affect one group adversely as opposed to another group? I have no idea. I mean, and I guess that's the whole issue. Before, I knew what the issues were that were a problem. Well, exactly. And if it's more
Reclassification approach, which is that a bad thing?
well, it was before, and that's why we changed it.
We made it less rigorous.
Well, I think
Right.
the thing that we,
With the writing requirement, at least.
the thing that we removed was the district's writing assessment. We did not change the state test. This LPAC is just a replacement of the CELT test. We haven't added the writing component that the district used to administer as part of the assessment. So we're just replacing one state test for another state test, and that's it. The writing component that we had in 2015, 2016, if we looked at the proficiency rates for all kids, what we noticed was, and I want to say it was somewhere around 20 to 30% for all kids, but we were expecting our EL students to pass that test in order to get reclassified. Since we've removed it, we've had more kids reclassified, but we've also noticed that our RFEP kids, the reclassified kids, are now performing at a different level. Irregardless of that, though, the LPAC is now the state's assessment that is used. We're not adding anything to it. We're simply saying that the level 4 is what the state has determined is the requirement for proficiency. Therefore, as our requirement, which was outlined in the earlier board policy or approach, is that our requirement for them to qualify for the LPAC portion, which is the state administered test, they have to get a level 4 also.
Okay, thank you. That makes more sense to me. Greg, I think that's more clear of an issue for me because the writing issue isn't an issue.
Right. We're not adding a right. There may be a writing component of the LPAC, but we are not adding a district writing assessment on top of it. And what we had before was a district writing assessment that was on top of it that all of our kids were struggling with, not just one group. This assessment is just CELT for LPAC. It's just a flat out replacement.
Thank you. That helps. Greg?
And CELT had 4 scores,
Had 5
and we required which score?
at that time.
The top score?
The top 2.
Either of the top 2?
Yes.
So we could potentially accept either of the top 2 of this score as well?
No, not based on what you read.
No. not based
No,
on
they
that.
don't
No.
correlate in
So the
that.
bridging, so low bridging isn't good enough. Nobody thinks it is, correct?
I'm not sure. That's a question.
It's a question.
Well, I think going back to this presentation right here, it says that, for level 3, you're moderately
It's
developed
moderate
in English.
to
So you
versus
may
well
need
developed.
help using English to communicate on less familiar school topics. Whereas a level 4 is that they are well developed in English skills. And so the likelihood of them passing the state assessments is higher than what it is if you do a level 3. And so I think, and if my recollection and Mrs. Smith can correct me if I'm wrong, level 4 and 5 were sort of combined into level 4 now from the CELT.
Yes.
And so that would be the equivalent standard for the CELT test for the LPAC to the CELT test.
Is there a way to verify that that's what happened? You said you're not sure if your recollection is correct if they.
Well, I mean, the person who works with this on a day in and day out is right over there.
Yes.
Is it documented somewhere that the state consolidated the top 2 score levels as 2 passing scores into the 1 level of this LPAC? Because if so, then I'm ready to approve this. If that's not what they did,
Let's
then
see. I'm trying to
not
think if it's
sure if we
documented.
understand it well enough.
Could probably, if you give me a moment.
But I just want to just say this: if you add level 3, then essentially for our first cohort, for all of the students who meet the standard, we're close to 70% already out the gate. And I don't think that's after the first administration of a test, that was the board's intent to say the goal is to get as many students reclassified within the cohort. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, our goal is to get to 80%. So if you're going to put us at 70 up front, it's a pretty easy bar to make. But I don't think that's the intent. I think our intent is to make sure our EL students are proficient and are capable of moving forward. And so this 45.9 or 50% means that we still have, within these different cohorts, we still have a lot of work that we have to do in order to get them caught up to succeed. And so you can see the performance that we discussed at an earlier meeting of where our kids are.
Well, and when you just went back to that other slide where it said level 3 and level 4 said they can sometimes use English to access new material. That
The other one said usually.
some
So that's the difference we're talking about here.
well usually means most of the time. Sometimes means not. Maybe yes, maybe no. And I mean, I want what's best for kids. I want kids to be able to access the material.
No,
So-
we get that.
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
but
That's the goal.
That's the goal. That's no one's questioning
I mean,
that.
So
I guess the request is if you're looking for us to bring back more information, are you just looking for what is the comparison between a level 4 and 5 of the CELT to a level 4 of the LPAC? Is there anything else that you are looking for in terms of information to make a decision?
It's the only remaining question I
That-
have.
Yeah, that's the only one. What's uncomfortable about this is just there's such a dramatic. I mean, look, I mean, and Laura can attest to this. The use of a word is a big deal, not only in the issue of law but also with education. Let's talk about the difference between usually and sometimes. Is there really a big difference in how we define that? I mean, that's the whole thing. It could be one thing for someone and something else for someone else. And I wish in that case the state was a little bit more clear.
I would say sometimes and occasionally are more synonymous than sometimes and usually.
And we could debate that all night.
We could.
That's why they have
Ellen?
claim construction hearings at the federal district court levels. Let's define a unit.
So if we could find out if there's an official state guidance related to how the old scores map to the new scores, or how they overlap, or the distribution of ability across the scores, because if the 4 and the 5 on the CELT became the 4 on the LPAC, then it's not changing the standard, and that's fine. But if the 4s are now split, but the old 4s are split between 3s and 4s now, I'd like to know if we want to make it harder.
There will be no state guidance at this time explicitly stating those pieces. That's the guidance that's been given. What I can show you is what was the former CELT, those levels, and that same graphic from the previous presentation of what an English learner can do at each of those levels.
Okay,
I
did-
wouldn't
yeah,
even
did-
hesitate to compare the two assessments. That's like comparing a CST with a Common Core SBAC.
Yeah.
We've never done that. We've just transitioned to levels of proficiency, but I will do my best to bring the board more information about the CELT and formal levels of proficiency and what language learners are able to do, the way that it is worded in LPAC. So what you're asking for does not exist, but I will give more background information
Will
about
this
levels of
require
proficiency.
extensive work on your part? I know we have a lot of initiatives on our agenda, and I'm just wondering if it will take a whole lot
You
of
can
your
move
time.
to approve the agenda, move to approve the item now if you like. You might have 3 votes if it matters to you to get it done.
We might have 3 votes. I'm just wondering how much time Ms. Smith thinks it would take to
look up
compile
the-
what you're looking for.
the
I
description
don't
of
think the
CELT.
work is extensive. I think the work may be misguided, meaning we've had one administration of LPAC. There is no state guidance yet on those pieces. And in the interim, LEA's local educational agencies have been given the prerogative and purview to set a standard in the interim. That's challenging, but we have been in this place before, transitioning from CST to Common Core. And it's tough because we don't know, and I agree with you, Trustee Gutierrez, I don't have enough tangible information right now. I do think Dr. Rudolph is correct in that we want the highest level of proficiency for our English learners, but by saying that within the LPAC assessment, it's not asking over and above what we're asking of our English only students, meaning there's no additional component, which we did have before, and I think that was the issue. So that helped clarify for me where you were with, we did this before and we don't want to go down that road again. I do see this item coming back once we may get spring guidance from the state as we march towards a second assessment statewide of LPAC.
When you say you see it coming back, that there might be another policy change? Another
That either the state will
criteria
say
change?
everyone uses this criteria and you don't make up different criteria in different, school districts. I know Kathy Bauer is called frequently at the county, and she's relied upon what her team and what we do, and other districts have already consulted with us with our decision and have moved along with similar criteria as far as the LPAC level 4.
So you anticipate it might come up again in the spring? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion on this item?
I'd like to hear from Ms. Wilson. I don't want to make a motion and have it lose 2 to 3. So I'd like to hear from Ms. Wilson, her thoughts on this right now.
I guess I'm not clear on why they would recommend we approve this if given all of their expertise in these areas, that we are somehow now lowering the level of where we would ask kids to be proficient in order to reclassify, or where these standards might not be equal to the English only students. I can't see why they would have brought it before the board unless these things had been fleshed out. I don't know the process by which these things occur behind the scenes, but I mean, I don't know that if the concern is that the LPAC level 4 is a higher standard than the CELT. Well developed to me, and it sounds like a good criteria to set. If somebody thinks that this LPAC level 4 is somehow testing at a lower level and will pass more kids that shouldn't be passed, then I'm not in favor of it, but I don't see that that's the case.
I think that's the opposite.
Perhaps I missed
concern.
something. The audio's good, but not perfect, so I may have missed something.
My impression of our colleagues' concern was that if we go to level 4, that might be too high. Am I restating that accurately?
I mean, it could be, but we don't know. That's the thing. So
But haven't we recently seen more kids reclassifying, but then not performing as well?
Well, sure, and that's another issue,
So I
right?
would
Because
rather
then we
set a
have to
higher
look at
standard so
the
they're
lack
not
of
no longer
support that
getting
was
the
going
support
on in the
structures that
schools
they
in
need.
general.
You guys can't.
Oh, I'm
vote
sorry.
at
Go
the same
ahead,
time.
Tamara.
I just said if that's the case, I'd rather set the standard higher so we're not putting kids in a category and then no longer providing them the support structures they need to continue to succeed.
Right, and so my concern is, one, it's already been addressed.
I don't need to meet numbers for reclassification. I want kids to succeed.
Yeah, no, I get that, but that's not the point. The point was that there was a misunderstanding from my end on terms of what the writing requirement was going to be, if it was going to be included again within this LPAC test. That's not the case. Dr.
No.
Rudolph said this is just a replacement of the CELT test.
Correct.
We're not going back to what we used to have before. So that was
Right.
clarified. Let's understand that point. The second point that Greg and I are talking about, though, is completely different. It relates to just the rigorous aspect of the LPAC level 4. Is it the same as what CELT used to be with 3 and 4, or 4 and 5, or what is it? Then Ms. Smith said, well, there's no way to compare that. Because the numbers are just not really there. We can't really compare apples to oranges. That's the dilemma. So now at this point, what do we find ourselves in? Well, we find ourselves in being able to understand now more about what this is all about. And if we feel comfortable with LPAC level 4, which I do, but I still have questions, and that's just natural. But my concern also, like yours, is, I didn't put the principals on the spot. I did with some, but I still heard over and over again that sometimes that our reps weren't getting some sort of support, that they need to get extra support, that they weren't being monitored closely, then that they weren't being monitored, but not closely. What does that mean? I want a straight answer. I'm not getting that. But with this, I have to trust the process, because then we can hold them, the school system, accountable for it. So, Greg, I thank you for jumping in and supporting, but
I'd like to know if the students that reclassified and then didn't do well as students who had reclassified in earlier periods had done, were students that how they scored on tests, and if it was because they were passed through the system with a lower passing score than the I'd like to see the breakout of the students that passed with the more permissive score and how they did afterwards versus the students that passed with the higher score, the prior standard, and see if that's the explanation for the difference in how they did before and after they were in the EL program. If the students, if those two populations are different enough and the students with the lower score do poorly afterwards, then we should probably raise the bar again. But if it's a different phenomenon that explains why some did well and some did not, then we shouldn't just raise it blindly.
And I think that's the trouble spot, though, because I don't think we have enough info to make that determination.
You mean
Plus,
it doesn't
there is no
Question for
CELT.
Ms. Smith.
Please ask your question.
Okay. It sounds like the state will be at some point coming down with additional guidance for this. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We
Do you
received a
know what the
memo
timeline
from,
is? I'm sorry.
it said sometime after January.
So this could be a very temporary policy that we're making.
Correct.
Or would this just be in effect for this current school year, and then we're likely going to make a change for the subsequent school year, which could make all these comparisons between data points challenging in and of itself?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I just wanted to
again, I
clarify
would
that.
hesitate and not recommend comparing a former exam, CELT, to the LPAC, that they should be looked at exclusively.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
it's just talking about the tests students actually took
Right.
and how they scored, then they reclassified, and then how they did. No, that part wasn't about comparing between tests. It was
When you
just
say the test they took, the CELT,
students that reclassified,
what
we
years?
should look at how they did on the tests, on all the assessments that together resulted in their reclassification, and see if
Maybe you really got to think about.
see if we can tell why reclassified students are doing less well than they used to.
But I think that, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think that's different from the LPAC level
I do
4
too.
and then the 3.
Maybe.
Yeah, and so for purposes of move on this issue, I'm fine with what I've heard, because it sounds like maybe in the spring, we'll have to come back to this because the state might change its mind on what level to use. But I'd be intrigued to follow up on Greg's question about that type of comparison, so that we can get a little bit of a feel for the LPAC and how that's affected the schools that way.
You ready to make a motion then?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do it. So I move that the board approve the revised English learner rate classification as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On a motion made by trustee Gutierrez and seconded by trustee Wheeler, the English learner reclassification criteria was passed unanimously.
Thank you, trustees. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you. And I
Dr.
just
Rudolph.
want to, so I'm hearing that we want to take a more explicit dive into RFEP students, how they were reclassified and what was their performance that led them to reclassification and so on.
And
Is that
up
correct?
to the point where we find out why they seem to not be doing as well now as they used to do.
So
Thank you.
We have 4 minutes, but we'll have to revisit what has to come off our table. I think that's a pretty hard request to go through all
I
of
do
our
too.
assessments and do a comparison. And so I would just
Is
say
that what I
that
asked?
while we can
No.
do it, if that's what the majority of the board wants.
Nobody
some-
asked that, actually. Nobody asked.
I'd like to put that on the parking lot and we
yeah.
can revisit it.
Yeah.
Can maybe do that?
Sure.
Okay, board updates. I think everybody's emailing Ms. Lilga. Items for future agendas.
Is there going to be an agenda on the next meeting? Agenda item on the next meeting about any petitions submitted?
Yes, at the next meeting there will be. And the future meeting dates are here, so in the agenda. So at 9:57, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
It popped up. Yeah, no, yeah, it's all good. I getcha.
Painful. It's just that we had the bar so high that students couldn't get out of the English language program, English learner program, even though they were comparable to their peers. And being in the English learner program was harming their educational outcomes
Because they missed out on electives and things?
for lots of reasons. We